Hello, my friend. Tonight we're stepping quietly into Victorian London in the year 1875. Not through the smoky doorway of a crowded lodging house or beneath the dripping arches of a railway bridge, but behind the polished front door of one of the city's wealthy homes. It is early morning, outside. London is already stirring beneath a pale grey sky. Hooves strike damp stone. Iron-rimmed wheels grind over the street. Somewhere beyond your curtains, a railway whistle carries through the haze, followed by the distant call of a street seller whose words are blurred by glass, brick, and money. You barely hear him. Heavy curtains surround your bed, muffling the city beyond. The mattress beneath you is deep and soft, layered with feathers and wool. Linen sheets touch your skin. A thick blanket traps the warmth left by your body during the night. For Victorian London, you're extraordinarily comfortable. Although, naturally, being extraordinarily comfortable requires a surprising number of other people to wake up before you. Before you move, a housemaid has already been awake for hours. Downstairs, fires have been cleaned and relit. Ash has been carried away. Coal has been brought up. Grates have been polished. Kitchen ranges are heating, water is being carried, boots may already be brushed, passages swept, lamps attended to, and breakfast preparations begun. Your peaceful morning is built upon someone else's considerably less peaceful one. That is one of the first truths of wealthy Victorian life. Luxury rarely means that work disappears. It means the work becomes invisible. You lie still for another moment, perhaps listening to the faint crackle from the fireplace, even in a prosperous house. Central heating in the modern sense is not something you can casually expect. Fireplaces remain essential, and rooms away from them can be remarkably cold. London has a dampness that seems personally committed to finding exposed skin. A servant may have prepared your bedroom fire before you rise, making the transition from blankets to morning slightly less heroic. Eventually there is movement at the door. Hot water arrives, not from a tap conveniently producing an endless stream at exactly the temperature you prefer, depending on your particular house and its plumbing. Water may have been heated elsewhere and carried upstairs in heavy containers. The washstand in your bedroom holds a basin and jug. You wash your face and hands. A more elaborate bath can be arranged. But bathing habits vary considerably among Victorians, and historians have good reason to resist the old caricature that everyone in the 19th century simply avoided water. The wealthy increasingly value cleanliness. They simply have to organise it. Plumbing is improving rapidly in fashionable London, particularly after the sanitary reforms and engineering projects of the previous decades. Some affluent houses possess sophisticated bathrooms by contemporary standards. Others combine newer pipes with older routines. Victorian modernity arrives unevenly. You might have a flushing water closet somewhere in the house, an object that would have seemed astonishingly luxurious to earlier generations. Yet even expensive plumbing can smell unpleasant, leak, freeze, or connect imperfectly to drainage systems. Progress, as usual, comes with maintenance. You turn toward the window. A servant has drawn back part of the curtain, and morning London appears. Rows of substantial houses face the street, their windows repeating themselves along terraces of brick and stucco. Railings separate private steps from public pavement. A carriage waits farther down the road. A servant crosses a doorway. Smoke rises from chimney pots by the hundreds, then thousands. Beyond your immediate neighbourhood, millions of fires are burning coal, domestic fireplaces, factories, workshops, locomotives, bakeries and countless businesses contribute to the haze. Victorian London can smell of coal smoke, horse manure, damp stone, cooking, sewage, leather, tobacco, and occasionally something mysterious enough that asking questions would only make breakfast less enjoyable. Your wealth protects you from much of the worst of it. Not all. Soot settles democratically. It lands on wealthy windowsills as enthusiastically as poor ones. If you enjoy these quiet journeys into the ordinary details of history, you can subscribe and join me again for another long evening in the past, And while you're settling in, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is there. There is something rather comforting about imagining all those different places growing quiet together. For now, though, you're still in bed, and even your bed tells a story about money. A wealthy household spends heavily on textiles, curtains, carpets, upholstered chairs, tablecloths, towels, bed linen. Decorative coverings and clothing consume enormous quantities of fabric. Fine materials communicate status, but they also require constant cleaning and maintenance. Dust is relentless. Coal smoke is relentless. Mud is relentless. Victorian elegance is engaged in a permanent war against Victorian London. You're simply wealthy enough to employ reinforcements. The bedroom itself offers clues about your position. There may be patterned wallpaper, framed pictures, polished wooden furniture, perhaps a dressing table crowded with brushes, bottles and small personal objects. Taste matters enormously. Too little decoration may appear mean. Too much may appear vulgar. The ideal, wealthy interior announces abundance while pretending abundance is perfectly normal. And this is important, because Victorian wealth is not merely about possessing things. It is about knowing how to possess them correctly. New money can buy the same chair as old money. It cannot immediately buy generations of confidence about where that chair ought to stand. Social distinctions in 1875 are complicated. Aristocratic rank remains immensely influential. But London also contains bankers, industrialists, merchants, lawyers, physicians, financiers and businessmen whose fortunes can rival those of established landowners. Some families inherit wealth, others manufacture it, and some inherited fortunes, quietly enough, are becoming less secure than appearances suggest. Agriculture is changing, investments rise and fall, estates are expensive, houses consume money at a startling rate. A grand home is not simply an asset. It is a hungry creature. Coal goes into it. Food goes into it. Wages go into it. Repairs, candles, gas, linens, horses, furniture, entertaining and clothing all disappear into its enormous mouth. You must maintain appearances because appearances help maintain status. There is gentle absurdity in this. You possess enough money to avoid many ordinary worries, only to discover an entirely new collection of expensive worries waiting for you upstairs. Is the dinner sufficiently impressive? Is the carriage fashionable? Are you acquainted with the correct people? Has someone noticed that the drawing room curtains are becoming dated? Terrifying questions. You stretch beneath the blankets. If you're a wealthy man, your morning may eventually lead toward business, politics, a profession, a club, an estate office. Or perhaps very little formal work at all, depending upon the source of your income. If you are a wealthy woman, your day will be shaped differently. Household management, correspondence, visiting, charitable activity, children, clothing and social obligations can fill hours without producing anything Victorian society is willing to call a profession. Gender creates powerful boundaries. So does age. So does marital status. A young unmarried woman, a married society hostess, an elderly widow and a wealthy bachelor can inhabit the same prosperous London while experiencing remarkably different freedoms. Even inside privilege, there are doors. Some open easily, others remain firmly closed. And throughout the house, actual doors are opening now. Footsteps move along corridors. Servants communicate in low voices. A bell may sound somewhere. The machinery of the household is gathering speed while you remain almost entirely detached from its effort. This bell system is one of the quiet technologies of domestic hierarchy. Wires connect rooms to bells in servants' areas, allowing members of the household to summon assistance without wandering through passages shouting names. A pull, a distant ring, someone appears. Convenient for you, less relaxing for the person listening for it. The servants themselves occupy a world deliberately separated from yours. Backstairs, basement rooms, attic bedrooms and service passages allow domestic labour to happen with minimal intrusion into fashionable spaces. A successful household should almost seem to operate by magic. Coal arrives in fireplaces, food appears on tables, clothes return clean, beds remake themselves, mud vanishes from boots. Of course, there is no magic. There are tired people. For the moment, however, you see only the polished result. Your morning clothes are waiting. Breakfast is approaching. The fire has taken the sharp edge from the room, and beyond the window the city grows louder, darker with smoke, busier with wheels and feet. You rise. Your feet meet carpet rather than bare boards. Even that small softness is part of the difference between your London and the London experienced by the majority outside. You possess space, warmth, privacy, time, perhaps most importantly, you possess the ability to make inconvenience someone else's problem. Yet as you cross the bedroom toward the waiting clothes, you begin to notice how much machinery is required to preserve that effortless life. Every polished surface has been polished by somebody. Every fire has been carried upstairs in pieces of black coal. Every clean shirt has passed through hands you may rarely notice. And the enormous house around you, so quiet from the comfort of your bedroom, is already humming like a hidden engine. You're about to see just how many rooms, routines, servants, fires, pipes, bells, and carefully concealed labours are required to make wealth look easy. You step from the bedroom and into a house that seems, at first glance, remarkably calm. That calm is carefully manufactured. The corridor is carpeted to soften footsteps. Doors close off private rooms. Heavy curtains trap warmth and absorb sound. Paint, wallpaper, polished wood, brass fittings, framed pictures, decorative tables and carefully chosen ornaments turn the interior into a controlled little world, separated as much as possible from the noisy city beyond. But beneath that polished surface, the house is already in full motion. If your family is genuinely wealthy rather than merely comfortable, you may occupy a substantial townhouse in one of London's fashionable districts, Belgravia, Mayfair. Parts of Kensington and other prosperous neighbourhoods contain impressive terraces and squares, where architecture itself becomes a declaration of social position. From the street, your home may appear tall rather than enormously wide. London land is valuable. So wealth climbs. Floor rises above floor, connected by staircases that quietly divide the household according to status and function. The finest rooms occupy the most desirable levels. Drawing rooms may stretch across the front of the house with large windows overlooking the street or square. Dining rooms provide enough space for formal entertaining. Bedrooms occupy quieter floors above. And then there are the places visitors are not supposed to admire. Kitchens, sculleries, pantries, servants' bedrooms, coal storage, workrooms, backstairs. These are the organs hidden inside the elegant body. You begin walking downstairs. Your hand slides along a smooth banister polished by years of use. Although much of that polishing has been done by servants rather than fashionable hands. Morning light reaches through tall windows, softened by curtains and London's smoky atmosphere. The house may be decorated according to changing Victorian tastes. Dark woods are fashionable. Patterned wallpapers can cover walls with flowers, leaves, geometric designs or elaborate repeating motifs. Carpets add warmth and colour. Upholstered furniture offers comfort, though perhaps not always the sort of comfort your 21st century spine would immediately recognise. Victorians enjoy objects. Lots of objects. Tables may carry photographs, decorative boxes, porcelain, small sculptures, books, vases and souvenirs. Walls can become crowded with pictures. Mantelpieces gather ornaments with the determination of archaeological sites. To modern eyes, some wealthy Victorian interiors look wonderfully rich. Others look as though every available surface has lost an argument with a decorative object. But clutter can communicate prosperity. Objects reveal travel, education, taste, family connections and purchasing power. Items from across Britain's empire and international trading networks may appear in wealthy homes, sometimes stripped of the complicated histories that brought them there. The world enters your drawing room as decoration. Keeping all of this clean is another matter. London produces astonishing amounts of dust and soot. Coal smoke enters through cracks and open windows. Fireplace ash spreads easily. Mud follows shoes and boots indoors, so servants clean constantly. A housemaid may rise around dawn or earlier, depending on the household. She empties chamber pots, carries water, sweeps, dusts and tends fires. Much of the dirtiest work should be completed before the family appears. That is the ideal. The wealthy household likes labour best when labour is almost invisible. You pass a fireplace. Coal burns behind the grate. Almost every important room may have its own fire during cold weather, meaning someone must supply coal, remove ash, and clean the grate. The amount of physical work required simply to keep a large Victorian house warm is impressive, and warmth remains uneven. Stand close to the fire and you may feel almost roasted. Cross the room and winter reminds you who is actually in charge. Corridors can remain chilly. Bedrooms cool overnight. Drafts slip around windows and doors. Wealth gives you more fireplaces, thicker curtains, carpets and servants to maintain them. But it does not create the perfectly regulated indoor climate you take for granted today. Then there is lighting. By 1875, gas lighting is common in many affluent London homes, though adoption and arrangements vary. Turn a fitting and with the proper system. You can illuminate a room far more conveniently than earlier generations relying entirely on candles and oil lamps. Convenient does not mean flawless. Gas flames consume oxygen and release heat and combustion products. They can discolour ceilings. Poor fittings may leak. The smell can be unpleasant. A brilliant Victorian drawing room glowing with gaslight is therefore both impressive and slightly determined to ruin its own wallpaper. Candles remain useful too, particularly where softer or portable light is desired. Electric lighting exists experimentally and is attracting attention, but widespread domestic electricity still belongs to London's future. For you, darkness remains something fraught with flame. Water presents another mixture of luxury and inconvenience. Your house may have piped water, and improvements in London's water supply have transformed urban life. Wealth increases your chances of possessing good plumbing, bathrooms and water closets, but systems vary enormously from house to house. A bathroom is becoming an increasingly desirable feature in prosperous homes. Perhaps yours contains a substantial bath supplied with hot and cold water, or perhaps servants still carry hot water upstairs. Either way, your ability to bathe comfortably depends on infrastructure and labour that remain mostly hidden when everything works properly. When it does not work properly, you notice very quickly. Victorian plumbing can be complicated, and 19th century ideas about sanitation are changing rapidly. Earlier assumptions about disease and foul air have been challenged by accumulating evidence about contaminated water and infection. London has already experienced terrifying cholera epidemics. The great engineering works associated with Joseph Bazalgette have transformed the city's sewer network, particularly after the notorious summer when the Thames became so foul that even Parliament could no longer politely ignore it. By your morning in 1875, London possesses a vastly improved sewer system. Still, sanitary perfection has not arrived. Household drains can be badly designed. Sewer gases may enter homes through faulty connections. Water storage arrangements can create contamination risks. Even wealthy families sometimes discover that expensive houses contain remarkably unpleasant surprises behind the walls. Money helps. It does not repeal bacteria. You continue downstairs and hear a faint bell somewhere in the servant's domain. The bell system maps the hierarchy of your house. A wire runs from a bell pull in a family room to a labelled bell below stairs. When summoned, a servant can identify where assistance is required. Dining room, drawing room, bedroom, perhaps dressing room. The bells wait silently until someone upstairs decides silence has lasted long enough. Below stairs, the household has its own hierarchy. At the top may stand the butler in a very wealthy household, responsible for important aspects of service. Wine, silver and male servants. The housekeeper holds considerable authority over female domestic staff and household stores. A cook rules the kitchen with powers that should never be underestimated by anyone hoping to eat dinner. Then come footmen, ladies' maids, valets, housemaids, kitchen maids, scullery maids and other workers depending on the family's fortune and needs. Not every rich household employs all of these positions. Victorian domestic service is far less standardised than later popular imagination sometimes suggests. Household size, income, location and personal preference create considerable variation. But one principle remains clear. The richer you are, the more specialised other people's work can become. A modest middle-class family might employ one general servant who does nearly everything. You may employ one person to dress you, another to serve meals, another to clean bedrooms, and another whose professional relationship with your household largely involves silver. That is luxury measured in human specialisation, and the servants do not simply work in different places. They may live in the house. Some sleep in attic rooms high above the family's bedrooms. Others occupy quarters closer to working areas. Their rooms are usually simpler, colder, and less private than yours. A young servant may share sleeping space. Her day can be extremely long. Privacy, one of your greatest luxuries, is distributed unevenly beneath the same roof. You enter the drawing room. Here the house performs its public identity. Chairs are arranged for conversation. A piano may stand nearby, waiting for someone to demonstrate both musical education and the ability to survive several minutes of polite attention. Books suggest cultivation. Paintings suggest taste. Flowers, when available, add freshness. This room is not merely for sitting. It is a stage. Visitors will judge the furniture, cleanliness, decoration and atmosphere. They may notice what has changed since their last call. They may notice what has not changed. Victorian social observation can be remarkably efficient. A fashionable household must therefore balance novelty against vulgar display. You want expensive things. You simply do not want to look excited about having expensive things. That would be unfortunate. Old wealth should appear relaxed. New wealth must learn relaxation. Beyond the drawing room lies the dining room, another carefully managed space. A large table waits beneath a hanging light. Sideboards may display silver or hold serving equipment. Chairs stand ready for dinners where seating arrangements can reveal alliances, rank and social ambitions. Downstairs, meanwhile, the kitchen feels like another country. The temperature rises. Copper pans hang nearby. A large range dominates the room. Meat may roast before intense heat. Sauces simmer. Bread, vegetables, pastries and puddings require preparation. Nearby, the scullery handles some of the wettest and dirtiest labour. Water splashes. Pots blacken. Knives need cleaning. Coal must be carried. Food scraps accumulate. The polished plate that eventually appears before you has travelled through a world you rarely visit. Even laundry can become an enormous undertaking, involving soaking, boiling, scrubbing, rinsing, wringing, drying and ironing. Some washing may be sent outside the household depending on arrangements. Your clean linen therefore represents hours of physical labour. So does your polished staircase. So does your warm bedroom. So does the apparently effortless breakfast waiting somewhere ahead. You begin to understand the strange architecture of Victorian wealth. Your house is designed not merely to give you comfort, but to separate comfort from the labour producing it. Front stairs and back stairs, family rooms and servants' rooms, polished silver above, coal dust below, soft carpets beneath your feet, stone floors beneath theirs. And yet both worlds depend completely upon one another. Without servants, the mansion becomes almost impossible to operate at the standard society expects. Without the mansion, those servants lose wages, lodging and employment, however demanding that employment may be. The relationship is unequal, intimate, complicated and sometimes tense. For now the machinery continues smoothly. A servant crosses the passage and disappears through a door almost before you register the movement. The fire burns. The curtains hang perfectly. The furniture shines. Nothing appears hurried. Nothing appears difficult. That, perhaps, is the finest trick your expensive house performs. It makes enormous effort look like nothing at all, and now that hidden effort is turning toward you personally. Because being wealthy in Victorian London does not allow you simply to put on yesterday's comfortable clothes and wander downstairs. Your appearance must also perform. Your hair, shirt, boots, fabrics, jewellery, and smallest visible details are about to tell everyone who you are before you have spoken a single word. Your clothes are waiting. But dressing is not simply the act of covering yourself before breakfast. It is social communication. In wealthy Victorian London, fabric speaks. Cut speaks. Cleanliness speaks. Even the condition of your gloves can quietly announce whether you understand the world you claim to inhabit. If you are a wealthy gentleman, your morning begins with layers. A linen or cotton shirt sits against the skin, accompanied by drawers and socks, depending on the season and occasion. You add trousers, waistcoat, coat, neckwear, boots or shoes, and perhaps a watch chain arranged with just enough visibility to suggest quality without appearing desperate for applause. Fashion in 1875 favours a controlled male silhouette. Compared with some earlier periods, elite men's clothing can appear restrained. Dark coats and sober colours are common, especially for formal situations. Respectability increasingly expresses itself through good tailoring rather than an explosion of decoration. This does not make your wardrobe inexpensive. Quite the opposite. The difference between an ordinary coat and an excellent one may be obvious to precisely the people whose opinions matter most. Tailoring is crucial. A fashionable gentleman may visit one of London's respected tailors, with Savile Row already strongly associated with elite bespoke clothing. Garments are measured and fitted specifically to the body. A coat should sit correctly. Trousers should fall correctly. Nothing should suggest that you borrowed the entire arrangement from a slightly differently shaped cousin. Your valet, if you employ one, assists with this daily performance. He may prepare clothing, brush coats, care for boots, manage accessories, help you dress and keep track of a wardrobe containing garments for different times and activities. Morning wear, evening wear, outdoor clothing, formal clothing, riding clothes, perhaps sporting garments. Victorian wealth produces specialised clothing for specialised lives. There is something wonderfully circular about it. You are rich enough to own clothes for activities that require more clothes. If you are a wealthy woman, the process becomes considerably more elaborate. You begin with undergarments, including a chemise and drawers, followed by a corset. The corset shapes the torso according to contemporary ideals and helps support the weight and structure of other garments. Victorian corsetry has accumulated myths. Popular stories sometimes imagine every woman being crushed into an impossibly tiny waist, barely able to breathe while fainting artistically onto nearby furniture. Reality is more varied. Some women do practice tight lacing, and contemporary doctors and commentators debate its effects. Fashion illustrations promote narrow waists, but not every woman pursues extreme measurements. Corsets are ordinary garments worn with different degrees of tightness according to preference, fashion, body shape and circumstance. Still, you would notice one. Your modern habit of elastic waistbands has not prepared you emotionally for 1875. Over the corset come additional layers, stockings, petticoats. A corset cover may be worn, then the dress itself. Constructed from substantial quantities of fabric and often requiring assistance to arrange properly, the fashionable female silhouette has changed dramatically over the century. By the middle of the 1870s, fullness is increasingly concentrated toward the back of the skirt. Bustles and structured undergarments help create the desired shape. Although styles shift quickly enough that historians can often estimate dates from silhouettes alone, imagine fashion changing so noticeably that future scholars can date your photograph by the architecture around your backside. Victorian achievement takes many forms. A lady's maid can be invaluable. She helps dress and undress you, arranges hair, cares for delicate garments and accessories, and may become deeply familiar with your personal routines. This creates one of those strange relationships produced by domestic service. Your maid may know your body, moods, wardrobe, correspondence habits, and private anxieties better than many socially equal acquaintances. Yet a rigid class boundary remains between you. Intimacy does not mean equality. Now comes the hair. Women's hairstyles can be intricate, with hair arranged in coils, braids or curls according to current fashion. False hairpieces and additional padding are not unknown. Hair jewellery and decorative combs may appear depending on the occasion. For men, facial hair enjoys an impressive Victorian career. Beards, moustaches, whiskers, combinations that seem to involve lengthy negotiations between all three. Grooming is serious business. Brushes, combs, razors, soaps, pomades, and scented preparations occupy the dressing area. Wealth allows you access to imported perfumes and expensive toiletries, although some products contain ingredients that would make a modern chemist quietly remove the bottle from your hand. Victorian cosmetics occupy an interesting position. Respectable ideals often praise a natural appearance, particularly for women, while cosmetics can carry associations with theatrical performers or supposedly questionable morality. Naturally, this does not prevent people from wanting better complexions. Powders, creams and beauty preparations circulate widely. Some are harmless enough, others may contain substances such as lead, mercury compounds or other ingredients that modern safety standards would regard with considerable alarm. Beauty has always possessed a remarkable ability to convince humans that chemistry is probably fine. Jewellery adds another layer of meaning. A wealthy woman may own brooches, earrings, bracelets, necklaces and rings set with precious stones. Diamonds become increasingly desirable during the 19th century as new sources expand supply and cutting improves. Pearls remain prized. Coral, turquoise and other materials appear in fashionable pieces. Jewellery can also carry emotion. Mourning jewellery is particularly associated with Victorian culture after Prince Albert's death in 1861. Queen Victoria's prolonged mourning helps reinforce elaborate customs surrounding bereavement among those able to afford them. Jet jewellery becomes strongly associated with mourning. Hair from a deceased loved one may even be incorporated into jewellery or decorative keepsakes. To you, wearing someone's hair around your neck might feel slightly unsettling. To a Victorian, it can represent tenderness, memory and physical connection in an age when death is much more visible in ordinary family life. Your accessories continue. A gentleman may carry a pocket watch, perhaps attached to a chain across the waistcoat. Accurate personal timekeeping is becoming increasingly important in a world of railways, appointments and expanding commercial schedules. A woman might carry a small purse, fanias, parasol or gloves depending on where she's going. Gloves deserve special attention. They protect the hands, certainly, but they also signal refinement. Proper gloves belong to respectable public appearance, and etiquette can govern when they are worn or removed. Then there is the hat. You are not casually leaving the house bareheaded. For men, styles vary with circumstance. The top hat remains strongly associated with formal, respectable male dress, while other hats serve less formal situations. Women wear hats or bonnets decorated according to fashion, sometimes with flowers, ribbons, feathers and other ornaments. The Victorian fashion trade has consequences far beyond your dressing room. The appetite for feathers, for example, eventually contributes to enormous pressure on bird populations, helping provoke later conservation campaigns. A fashionable ornament in London can begin with a dead bird thousands of miles away. Your wardrobe is connected to the world. Cotton may come through global trade networks shaped by empire and industrialization. Silk travels from distant producers. Dyes rely increasingly on modern chemistry. Wool connects city consumers with rural landscapes. Leather requires livestock, tanning and skilled manufacture. Even the simplest looking garment contains geography. And labour, always labour. Your shirt has been woven, cut, sewn, washed and ironed. Your boots have been shaped and polished. Your dress may contain yards upon yards of carefully worked fabric. Someone repairs every loose seam. Someone removes every stain. Laundry is particularly demanding. Without modern washing machines, Cleaning clothing and household linen requires soaking, scrubbing, boiling, rinsing, drying, and ironing. Wealth means you rarely perform these tasks yourself, but you still generate the dirt. London helps enthusiastically. The moment you step outside, mud threatens hems and shoes, horse traffic leaves streets coated with unpleasant material. Coal smoke settles onto fabrics. Rain transforms road surfaces into mixtures best left undescribed before breakfast. Long women's skirts face this environment daily. There are practical strategies, including lifting skirts when walking and wearing protective outer garments. But fashionable clothing and filthy streets remain uneasy companions. Even indoors, clothing creates practical restrictions. A large skirt changes how you sit. A corset affects movement. Layers trap heat. Formal coats constrain the body. You cannot simply collapse into a chair in the manner of someone wearing a sweatshirt after a long flight. Your posture is part of the performance, and clothes help enforce it. There are also countless subtle rules about what you wear at particular hours. Morning dress differs from evening dress. A wealthy woman may change clothes several times in a single day, especially if social engagements demand it. A morning outfit may give way to clothing for walking or visiting. Dinner requires another transformation. A ball demands something more elaborate still. You are not merely dressing for weather. You are dressing for time, for location, for company, for rank, for whether shoulders are socially acceptable at this particular hour. The rules can seem exhausting, but they perform an important function. They allow members of the elite society to recognize one another. Knowing the rules demonstrates upbringing. Making mistakes reveals uncertainty. This is why money alone cannot instantly make you socially secure. A newly rich industrialist can purchase magnificent clothing. His family must still learn when to wear it. Old elite families possess something more difficult to acquire than silk: habit. They know which details matter precisely because nobody has needed to explain them. You look into the mirror. Your clothing now sits properly. Hair is arranged. Boots shine. Accessories occupy their correct places. Perhaps a faint fragrance rises from your collar or wrists. You look wealthy. More importantly, you look as though being wealthy requires no effort whatsoever. Behind you, however, another person has already collected the discarded garments. Buttons will be checked. Fabric will be brushed. Mud will later be removed. Laundry will travel into that hidden world of hot water, soap, steam, and aching hands. The illusion continues. You turn toward the door. Your clothes have transformed you from a private person into a visible member of Victorian society. But before the carriage, the calling cards, the clubs, and the fashionable streets, there is another daily ritual waiting below. The dining table is set. Silver gleams beneath the morning light. Coffee and tea are arriving. Covered dishes release warm scents into the room, and after spending so much effort looking respectable, you are finally permitted to do something pleasantly human. You're going to eat. You enter the breakfast room carrying all the quiet signals of wealth now arranged upon your body, and immediately encounter another collection of signals waiting on the table: white linen, polished silver, porcelain, gloss, covered dishes, tea and coffee, perhaps flowers. Even breakfast has been dressed before meeting you. Unlike a formal dinner, however, breakfast in a wealthy Victorian household can feel relatively relaxed. Depending on the family, people may arrive at slightly different times rather than assembling with military precision. Letters and newspapers can accompany the meal. Conversation may be lighter, especially if nobody has yet gathered enough energy to become offended by politics. The room smells warm after the cooler corridors. Coffee rises from a pot. Toast waits in a rack. Perhaps there are eggs, bacon, ham, fish, kidneys, sausages, cold meats, rolls, preserves, or other dishes depending on household preference. The famous Victorian appetite was real in certain prosperous circles, but surviving menus can also mislead you if you imagine every person consuming every dish placed on the table. A wealthy table offers choice. That is part of the luxury. You do not necessarily eat 6 different meats before 10 in the morning simply because they are available. Although Victorian cookbooks occasionally seem determined to test the possibility, you sit. A servant attends nearby. Food service varies between households and occasions, but breakfast can involve dishes placed on the sideboard so family members serve themselves or are assisted. This relative informality distinguishes it from the choreography of an important dinner. Still, almost nothing about the meal is truly simple. Take your tea. Tea has become deeply embedded in British life, but the leaves in your cup connect you to enormous global systems of cultivation, shipping, taxation, commerce and empire. Earlier British dependence on Chinese tea has been challenged during the 19th century by expanding tea production in British-controlled India, particularly Assam and other regions. By 1875, tea is no longer merely an exotic luxury for the very rich. It reaches broad layers of society, yet quality varies, and your household can afford excellent varieties. Sugar beside your cup carries an even darker historical weight. Britain's appetite for sugar was deeply entangled with Atlantic slavery before emancipation in the British colonies during the 1830s, and sugar production elsewhere continues under harsh labour systems. Your sweet breakfast therefore contains histories that polite conversation may prefer not to examine. Victorian wealth has a remarkable talent for placing distant labour inside beautiful containers. You add milk. Even this apparently innocent gesture can involve risk. London's milk supply is difficult to regulate perfectly. Milk can be diluted, contaminated, or obtained from unhealthy cows. Some urban dairying conditions are appalling. Reformers increasingly worry about food adulteration and public health. Food adulteration is one of the less charming features of 19th century commerce. Unscrupulous sellers may alter products to increase profit or improve appearance. Flour, spices, sweets, tea, and other goods attract suspicion at various times. Public concern has already produced legislation, though enforcement and scientific testing continue to develop. Being rich gives you advantages. Your household buys from trusted suppliers. Your cook and housekeeper may develop relationships with particular tradespeople. Quality ingredients are affordable, but wealth cannot guarantee purity. Your eating before refrigeration becomes an ordinary domestic technology. Ice is available, and ice houses or ice boxes can help preserve food in some wealthy households, but preservation still relies heavily on older techniques and careful management. Salting, smoking, pickling, drying, preserving in sugar, cold storage where possible, and simply buying fresh food frequently. London makes this possible because an enormous commercial network feeds the city every day. Markets receive meat, fish, vegetables, fruit, dairy products and imported goods from Britain and beyond. Railways have transformed the speed at which food can reach the capital. A fish caught far from London can travel toward your breakfast with astonishing speed by 19th century standards. The railway does not merely carry passengers, it changes what dinner tastes like. Seasonality still matters, however. You cannot assume that every fruit and vegetable will appear in perfect condition every month of the year. Wealth stretches the limits through glass houses, preservation and imported produce. But nature retains some influence over the menu. And then there are luxuries from farther away. Oranges, pineapples, spices, coffee, chocolate, wine, imported fruits. Their presence communicates purchasing power and London's place within global commerce. A pineapple had once been such an extraordinary luxury in Britain that simply displaying one could announce enormous status. By your time, it is more accessible than in earlier centuries, though still capable of carrying an aura of refinement. Imagine achieving such social importance that you invite people to admire your fruit. Human civilization is wonderfully strange. You reach for toast. Bread is fundamental across Victorian society. But the bread on your table differs sharply from what a desperately poor Londoner may be eating only a few streets away. You can demand fine white bread. White flour carries status because producing it requires greater processing, and the result is associated with refinement. Today, someone may pay extra for coarse whole grain bread while avoiding white bread for health reasons. Your Victorian self would find this reversal deeply confusing. Progress occasionally means becoming wealthy enough to rediscover peasant flour. Your breakfast might also include fish such as haddock or sole, perhaps prepared carefully by a cook whose reputation within the household depends upon consistency. A wealthy cook is not simply someone who eats food. She requires serious skill. Large households may expect complicated meals involving soups, sauces, pastries, roasts, puddings, and elaborate presentation. French culinary influence is strong among elite diners, and French terminology appears on fashionable menus. A truly excellent cook can command respect and relatively high wages within domestic service. This gives her unusual leverage. If the cook leaves unexpectedly, the household can descend into panic with impressive speed. The master of the house may control investments worth thousands of pounds. The cook controls dinner. It is not entirely clear who possesses the more immediate power. Nearby, the housekeeper supervises stores and household supplies. Valuable foods, tea, sugar, wine, and other goods may be carefully monitored. Locks are common on storage cupboards. This reflects expense, concerns about waste, and sometimes deep suspicion of servants. Victorian employers frequently worry about petty theft. Victorian servants frequently notice that their employers possess far more than they do. The resulting relationship can contain affection, loyalty, resentment, and surveillance all at once. Wine belongs particularly to the butler's responsibilities in many wealthy households. Cellars may contain claret, port, sherry, champagne, and other wines selected according to taste and occasion. At breakfast, however, you're more likely to concentrate on tea, coffee, and perhaps chocolate. Coffee culture has a long history in London, though the grand coffee house age of earlier centuries has changed. At home, good coffee remains another sign of comfort. You unfold the newspaper. Ink leaves a faint smell. Here your breakfast becomes connected to the wider city. Reports of Parliament, foreign affairs, business, crime, society, and imperial events compete for attention. Advertisements offer products, servants, houses, and services. The Victorian newspaper world is thriving. Literacy has expanded. Printing technology has improved. Railways distribute papers quickly. The abolition of earlier newspaper taxes has helped create a more accessible mass press. Information now moves through London at remarkable speed. Not internet speed, obviously. Nobody at breakfast has yet become furious about something that happened 12 seconds ago on another continent. There are advantages to the 19th century. A letter may lie beside your plate. Postal reform has transformed communication during the previous decades, and London's postal service can be astonishingly efficient in some circumstances. Multiple deliveries occur within a single day. You can exchange letters across the city with a rhythm almost resembling slow-motion messaging. People sometimes arrange meetings by post on the same day. Your morning correspondence may include invitations, bills, business matters, family news, or requests for charity. Even leisure generates paperwork. The servant brings another dish. Perhaps eggs. Eggs seem reassuringly straightforward. Yet even here freshness matters. Without printed expiration dates, households depend on suppliers, experience, and practical tests. Your cook understands ingredients in ways you probably do not. That is another feature of wealth. You can become remarkably detached from the mechanics of your own survival. You eat meat without seeing slaughter. You drink milk without meeting a cow. You enjoy a warm room without carrying coal. You wear clean linen without washing it. The city creates layers between you and necessity. Those layers are made of money and other people's work. There is also abundance. Food scarcity remains a genuine fear for many Victorian families. For the poorest Londoners, a lost wage or sudden illness can immediately affect what appears on the table. Your household faces a different question. Not whether there will be breakfast, but what kind. This distinction may seem ordinary to you because privilege quickly becomes normal when experienced every day. The silver spoon feels like a spoon. The fine tea tastes like tea. The servant becomes part of the room. Comfort hides itself through repetition. You finish your meal. A servant will remove the plate. Someone else will scrape it, wash it, dry it, and return it to storage. Leftovers may be reused in later dishes or distributed according to household custom. Waste exists, certainly. But Victorian cooks are often skilled at transforming yesterday's remains into today's meal. The kitchen cannot simply order more ingredients through an application when something runs out. Planning matters. Household books matter. Deliveries matter. The competence of servants matters. You wipe your mouth and rise. Your gloves and outdoor things are ready. Beyond the windows, London has fully awakened. Carriages roll past. Omnibuses carry passengers. Cabs search for fares. Pedestrians crowd pavements. Delivery carts block streets. Horses produce the unavoidable byproduct of a transport system powered largely by horses. Your own carriage waits outside. The door opens. Cold air reaches you, mixed with coal smoke and the dense smell of the city. Breakfast has shown you how wealth brings the world quietly onto your table. Now you are about to enter that world yourself and discover that the short distance between a wealthy drawing room and a poor London street can sometimes be measured in little more than a carriage turn. The front door closes behind you, and London immediately becomes louder. Inside, carpets, curtains and thick walls soften the city into a distant murmur. Outside, there is no such courtesy. Hooves strike the road, wheels rattle over uneven surfaces, drivers call to one another. Street sellers compete for attention. Dogs bark. Construction hammers somewhere beyond the terrace. A railway locomotive sends a low mechanical rumble through the distance, while smoke hangs above the rooftops like a second, less attractive sky. Your carriage waits near the steps. For a genuinely wealthy household, private transport is another visible declaration of status. Owning a carriage means more than buying a handsome vehicle. You need horses. Horses require food, shelter, grooming and veterinary attention. You need harnesses and equipment. You need somewhere to keep everything. And of course, you need people. A coachman manages the horses and drives. A very grand household may employ additional stable staff and perhaps footmen who accompany the carriage. The true luxury is not the carriage. It is maintaining the miniature organisation required to make the carriage appear whenever you want it. You climb inside. The door closes. Upholstery cushions you from the wooden and metal world outside, though Victorian suspension cannot completely protect you from London's roads. The carriage begins moving. Your body gently sways. Through the window, your fashionable neighbourhood passes in measured pieces. Tall houses, iron railings, clean steps, large windows, servants moving between doors, other carriages waiting outside respectable homes. The architecture creates an impression of order. Then the street changes. It does not take long. This is one of the most striking realities of Victorian London. Wealth and poverty do not always exist at comfortable distances from one another. Prosperous streets can stand surprisingly close to overcrowded districts. A few turns can alter the entire social landscape. Buildings become narrower. Shopfronts multiply. Pedestrians thicken around the carriage. Children appear in the street. Workshops open directly onto crowded roads. Clothes hang where they can dry. The air changes too. There is more smoke, more cooking, more refuse, more humanity packed into less space. Your carriage keeps moving. You remain physically separated from much of it by glass, wood, horses and money. Victorian observers frequently describe London as though it contains different worlds occupying the same geography. In a sense, it does. For wealthy residents, there are squares, clubs, parks, theatres, restaurants, private houses and shops designed around comfort and respectability. For the poor, the same city can mean overcrowded lodging houses, casual labour, pawn shops, street markets, workshops and constant uncertainty about rent. Between those extremes stretches a vast and complicated population that refuses to fit neatly into either category. Victorian society loves classification. Reality is less cooperative. Your carriage slows behind traffic. London is becoming increasingly congested. Thousands upon thousands of horses move through the capital, pulling private carriages, cabs, omnibuses, delivery vehicles, carts and commercial wagons. Before romanticising this elegant age of horse-drawn transport, you may wish to consider what thousands of horses leave behind. Manure, an astonishing quantity of it, and urine, also dead horses, because animals working on crowded urban streets sometimes collapse and cannot be instantly removed. Victorian London possesses many magnificent sights. Looking directly at the road surface is not always among them. Street sweepers work to clear crossings and pathways, sometimes hoping for tips from pedestrians. Mud mixes with animal waste and other refuse during wet weather. Your carriage protects your shoes. Another small victory for wealth. The smell remains undefeated. Yet the horse is essential. Without horses, much of London stops. Food does not reach shops as efficiently. Goods do not reach warehouses. Passengers lose a major source of transportation. Building materials do not move. Your elegant carriage is simply the fashionable tip of a vast horse-powered urban economy. Then there are the public alternatives. Horse-drawn omnibuses carry passengers along established routes. Cabs offer individual transport to those who can afford the fare. Railways have transformed movement across the metropolis and beyond. Most remarkable of all, beneath parts of the city. Trains are already running underground. The Metropolitan Railway opened in 1863. By your year, London's underground railway network is still small compared with what it will become, but the idea itself is extraordinary. Steam locomotives travel through tunnels beneath the capital. Steam underground. You may already sense the problem. Ventilation exists, but smoke and steam can make journeys unpleasant. Yet passengers use the railway because London desperately needs ways to move growing numbers of people. Modern Londoners complaining about a warm underground carriage would find their Victorian ancestors impressively unsympathetic. Your own carriage continues westward, or perhaps toward the commercial centre, depending on the day's purpose. You pass pedestrians whose clothing identifies broad differences in occupation and income. A gentleman in a well-cut coat, a clerk moving briskly toward work, a labourer, a maid on an errand, a tradesman, a woman selling something from a basket, a child carrying goods. Uniforms, aprons, hats, boots and fabric quality create a constantly shifting visual language. You are being observed too. Your carriage tells people something. So does the quality of the horses. So does your clothing. Even before anyone knows your name, London begins guessing your income. At an intersection, the carriage slows again. A child approaches, perhaps selling matches, flowers, newspapers, or some other inexpensive item. Victorian London contains large numbers of children whose lives involve paid work, informal selling or begging. The exact scale of particular forms of street work is difficult for historians to measure because records are incomplete, and contemporary observers sometimes exaggerate for political or charitable purposes. But child poverty is unquestionably visible. You may give a coin, you may look away, you may support a charitable organisation and tell yourself that organised assistance is wiser than encouraging street begging. Victorian debates about poverty are intense. Some people interpret poverty primarily as a moral problem. Others emphasise low wages, unemployment, illness, housing conditions and structural inequality. The language can be harsh. The poor are divided in respectable discussion into those considered deserving and those considered undeserving. As though hunger should first submit references, the workhouse system hangs behind these debates. For people unable to support themselves, entering a workhouse may provide food and shelter, but conditions are deliberately austere. Policymakers fear that generous relief will discourage work. To wealthy eyes, this may seem like responsible administration. From inside the workhouse, the philosophy probably feels rather different. Your carriage moves on. The child disappears behind you. This is the peculiar experience of privilege in Victorian London. Suffering can be intensely visible and remarkably easy to leave behind. A horse only needs to keep walking. Soon you approach broader streets and more prosperous commercial areas. Shop windows gleam. Banks and offices display stone confidence. Gentlemen enter buildings carrying papers. Delivery carts unload goods from across Britain and the world. London in 1875 is not merely Britain's capital. It is one of the central cities of global finance and imperial power. Money moves through these streets in quantities almost impossible to see. Ships arrive with tea, wool, timber, sugar, grain, spices, and countless other commodities. Banks finance ventures. Insurance companies calculate risks. Merchants exchange information. Telegraph wires allow news to travel with unprecedented speed. The empire reaches your breakfast table, your wardrobe, and your investment portfolio. Yet London itself contains profound deprivation. That contradiction is impossible to remove entirely from the view. You pass toward the Thames. The river has changed considerably since the notorious pollution crisis of earlier decades. London's new sewer infrastructure diverts much waste away from the central river, while the construction of embankments has reshaped sections of the waterfront. The Victoria Embankment, completed only a few years earlier, is a triumph of modern engineering. Beneath its elegant surface lie sewers, utilities, and infrastructure. Above it runs a broad new roadway. Gas lamps line parts of the improved riverside. Victorians are proud of such achievements, and reasonably so. The city is being rebuilt around you. Railway stations rise like monuments. New roads cut through old neighbourhoods. Sewers run underground. Telegraph systems connect businesses. Construction seems endless, but improvement has costs. When roads and railways carve through poorer districts, people can be displaced. Clearing what reformers call slums does not automatically create affordable homes for those who live there. Sometimes the problem simply moves. Your carriage enters another stream of traffic. Nearby, an omnibus carries passengers close together. A cab driver urges his horse onward. A delivery wagon blocks part of the road while workers unload crates. Your coachman waits with professional irritation. London traffic has been annoying wealthy people since long before the invention of the motor car. There is comfort in historical continuity. Eventually you pass one of the city's green spaces. Hyde Park offers something London desperately needs: air, space, trees, for the fashionable classes. The park is not merely a place to enjoy nature, it is another stage. Carriages parade along fashionable routes. Riders appear on Rotten Row. People observe one another. Who is present? Who accompanies whom? Who owns the impressive horse? Who has acquired a new carriage? A drive in the park can become social networking performed at several miles per hour. You might greet acquaintances. A hat lifts. A head inclines. Recognition is brief but meaningful. Visibility matters. To belong to society, you must occasionally allow society to confirm that you still exist. Yet even here, class boundaries are not absolute. Parks are public spaces used by a range of Londoners. Although different groups may dominate particular areas and times, the city keeps mixing people while simultaneously teaching them to remain separate. Your carriage turns again. The prosperous streets return. The poorest scenes are now behind you, though they remain geographically close. You settle against the seat. Perhaps you think about what you saw. Perhaps you do not. That uncertainty matters. We cannot know the private thoughts of every wealthy Victorian, and it would be unfair to imagine the rich as a single uncaring class. Many participate seriously in philanthropy, religious missions, housing reform, education and campaigns against social abuses. Others defend the existing order, most probably contain the familiar human mixture of sympathy, self-interest, habit and selective attention. Much as people do now, the carriage finally approaches your destination. Perhaps it is a bank, perhaps an office, perhaps a solicitor, perhaps a club where business is conducted without anyone committing the social error of making it look too much like work. Because now you reach another important question. Where does all this comfort actually come from? The house, the servants, the clothes, the carriage, the horses, the silver breakfast service. Somebody must pay for it. And among the wealthy of Victorian London, the answer reveals an entire hierarchy of inherited estates, investments, professions, commerce, and the peculiar prestige of possessing money without appearing to chase it. Your carriage stops before a building whose stone facade seems designed to reassure you that money is safe simply because the doorway is enormous. You step down. A servant or attendant opens the way, and within moments the noise of the street begins to fade again. Now comes the delicate subject that polite Victorian society often prefers to discuss indirectly. Money! You clearly possess it. The question is where it comes from. For the highest ranks of traditional society, inherited land remains one of the great foundations of wealth and status. An aristocratic family may possess estates far beyond London, receiving income from rents while maintaining a townhouse for the social and political season. Land is not merely an investment. It carries history, influence, identity. A fortune earned yesterday can be enormous. An estate inherited through generations carries another kind of authority. That distinction matters because Victorian Britain is experiencing a complicated relationship between old wealth and new money. Industrialization has created fortunes on a scale that earlier generations could scarcely imagine. Manufacturers, railway investors, merchants, mine owners, ship owners and financiers can become extraordinarily rich. Some purchase country estates. Some seek marriages connecting commercial fortunes with aristocratic names. The old elite may quietly disapprove of trade while becoming surprisingly open-minded when trade arrives carrying enough money. Principals are often more flexible near bankruptcy. You enter an office where papers wait on a polished desk. If your own fortune is inherited, you may spend considerable time managing investments without describing yourself as someone who works for a living. That distinction is socially useful. A gentleman can be busy. He simply should not appear dependent upon wages. You might oversee property, correspond with agents, attend meetings, manage investments, participate in politics, or serve on committees. All of this can consume hours. Yet the source of your social identity remains different from that of the salaried clerk sitting nearby. The clerk needs his position. You possess capital. Capital can work while you sleep. Victorian Britain offers an expanding universe of investments. Government securities are considered comparatively safe. Railway shares have attracted enormous enthusiasm during previous decades, sometimes rewarding investors and sometimes reminding them that excitement is not a financial strategy. Banks channel capital. Insurance companies spread risk. Joint stock companies make it possible to invest in ventures without personally operating them. Foreign bonds tempt those seeking higher returns. Mining, shipping, and infrastructure projects promise fortunes. Some deliver them, others deliver beautifully printed certificates and lifelong regret. Information therefore matters. You read financial newspapers. You speak with bankers. You consult solicitors. You listen to acquaintances who claim to know something important. This last category has survived every century of financial history. The telegraph is changing the speed of the game. Prices and commercial information can travel across long distances faster than any horse or ship. The successful investor increasingly lives in a world where information itself possesses value. London's financial heart, the city, pulses with this activity. Banks, brokers, insurers, merchants and exchanges concentrate within a relatively small area. Men hurry between offices carrying documents whose contents may represent fortunes. The Bank of England stands as a central institution in this financial landscape. Nearby, commercial networks extend across continents. A decision made in London can influence a railway project abroad, a shipment crossing an ocean, or a plantation producing goods you will later consume. This is where Victorian wealth becomes difficult to separate from empire. British investors place capital throughout the imperial world and beyond it. Railways, mines, shipping enterprises, plantations, government debt and trading companies connect metropolitan fortunes with distant labour and resources. The exact origins of a particular family's income may be complicated. Some fortunes have older links to slavery and compensation after abolition. Others derive from industries using imported raw materials. Some are tied directly to colonial enterprises. Others are largely domestic. There is no single Victorian fortune. but London's prosperity is undeniably connected to Britain's global power. You may barely see those connections. A dividend arrives as a number. The labour producing it happens somewhere else. Distance makes moral complexity easier to fire with the correspondence. Not all wealthy men are idle investors, of course. London contains highly successful professionals. A prominent barrister can earn substantial fees. Leading physicians and surgeons may become wealthy through fashionable practices. Architects, engineers and publishers can achieve considerable prosperity. Senior civil servants and politicians occupy prestigious positions. Though political office itself does not necessarily create a fortune, businessmen operate firms ranging from banking houses to import companies. The Victorian upper middle class is expanding in wealth and confidence. This produces social ambiguity. How rich must you become before society calls you rich? How many generations must pass before commercial money becomes respectable old money? There is no precise answer. That is convenient for everyone already inside. Income alone does not determine class. Birth, education, accent, occupation, family connections, property and behaviour all matter. A merchant might possess more cash than an aristocrat and still rank below him socially. A duke may be burdened by debt while receiving deference from people with far healthier bank accounts. Victorian class is not a ladder with neatly numbered steps. It is more like a staircase designed by several architects who refuse to speak to one another. Education helps you navigate it. If you are a wealthy man from the appropriate background, you may have attended one of Britain's elite public schools, meaning confusingly a private fee-paying institution. Eton, Harrow, Rugby, Winchester. Schools such as these provide more than education. They create networks. Later, Oxford or Cambridge may extend those connections. The people you meet become politicians, clergy, lawyers, administrators and influential gentlemen. Years later, an introduction that seems casual may open a door. Connections are a form of capital that rarely appears in account books. Your club performs a similar function, though you will encounter that world more fully later. Business can happen over lunch. Political alliances can form in smoking rooms. Information circulates through conversation. A gentleman who never appears to hurry may still be working continuously through relationships. This is the elegant Victorian art of making ambition look accidental. You examine correspondence from your solicitor. Property is another major source of wealth. London itself is expanding dramatically, and land ownership within or around the growing metropolis can produce substantial income. Great aristocratic estates own large sections of fashionable London. The Grosvenor family's connection with Mayfair and Belgravia is one famous example. Development transforms land into streets, terraces and squares. Leases generate income. The very neighbourhood where you live may therefore represent somebody else's enormous long-term investment. Your own household accounts remind you that income is only half the story. Being rich is expensive. Servants receive wages. Food must be purchased. Horses eat whether you have used the carriage or not. Coal arrives constantly. Repairs never truly stop. Taxes and rates must be paid. Clothing absorbs money. Entertaining absorbs more. Then there may be a country house. A country house can swallow money with aristocratic dignity. Roof repairs, gardens, estate workers, stable expenses, furniture, heating, guests. A family may possess impressive property while struggling with liquidity. This helps explain why marriages can carry financial importance. Marriage among wealthy Victorians certainly involves affection in many cases, but money, property and family strategy remain impossible to ignore. A wealthy heiress is not merely a charming young woman. She may also be a financial event. Marriage settlements can determine how property and income are controlled. For much of the 19th century, English married women's legal position regarding property has been severely restricted under the doctrine of coverture. Reform is underway. The Married Women's Property Act of 1870 has already allowed married women greater control over certain earnings and property than before, though much broader reform will follow in the next decade. For a wealthy woman in 1875, therefore, marriage can dramatically affect financial independence. A widow may sometimes enjoy more control over property than a married woman. An unmarried heiress occupies another legal position. Gender reaches directly into the bank account. You sign a paper. Perhaps you discuss a tenant. Perhaps an investment has performed well. Perhaps one has not. The numbers may seem abstract, but they support everything you touched this morning. Your feather mattress, your valet, your breakfast, your carriage, even your ability to spend an hour discussing investments rather than lifting crates depends upon accumulated wealth. Then there is debt. Victorian respectability does not prevent wealthy people from borrowing. Some aristocratic families carry enormous debts while maintaining spectacular appearances. Credit allows the performance to continue. Tailors, tradesmen and other suppliers may wait for payment from prestigious customers because the connection itself has value, and because demanding money too aggressively from the socially powerful can be awkward. Being rich sometimes means owing extraordinary amounts while everyone politely agrees not to panic yet. You leave the office. Outside, clerks are still working. They will remain at their desks long after your business is finished. Their relationship with time differs from yours. That may be one of the clearest signs of wealth. You can control much of your day. You can decide to visit a shop, take a carriage through the park, attend a club, call upon acquaintances, spend months away from London. The salaried worker sells hours. You largely own yours. And now, with financial matters settled for the moment, those hours become available for consumption. London is eager to help. Behind bright windows and polished counters waits an expanding world of luxury goods, fashionable novelties, imported fabrics, jewellery, books, furniture and objects you did not know you needed until a skilled shopkeeper placed them beneath excellent lighting. Your carriage moves toward the commercial streets. Money has spent the morning working quietly for you. Now you are going to return the favour by spending some of it. The carriage sets you down where London seems to have discovered that desire can be arranged behind glass. Shop windows face the street. Signs hang above doorways. Assistants wait behind counters. Carriages stop and depart in a steady rhythm, delivering people who already possess almost everything they need and are therefore perfectly prepared to purchase things they do not. Shopping is becoming one of Victorian London's great urban pleasures. For you, it is not simply an errand. It can be entertainment. The transformation has been developing for decades. London's older specialist shops and markets remain important, but larger retail establishments are creating new ways to browse and buy. Department stores are beginning to turn shopping into an experience in which different categories of goods can be explored under one roof. One important name is Whiteley's. William Whiteley began with a drapery business in Bayswater and expanded aggressively, bringing increasingly diverse departments together. His enterprise will eventually become famous as one of London's great department stores. Other businesses are evolving in similar directions. Harrods exists too, although the vast institution familiar to later generations has not yet reached its mature form. Your London stands in the middle of retail transformation. You enter a fashionable establishment. Warm air replaces the street chill. Fabric muffles some of the noise. An assistant approaches with careful attention. The relationship between wealthy customer and shop assistant has its own etiquette. You expect politeness without excessive familiarity. The assistant must judge when to speak, when to withdraw, what to recommend, and, perhaps most importantly, how much you are likely to spend. Retail has already discovered a timeless human truth. People enjoy being treated as though their taste is excellent. You examine fabric. Silk catches the light. Velvet feels dense beneath your fingers. Fine wool lies folded nearby. Colours have become increasingly exciting during the 19th century because chemistry is changing fashion. Synthetic dyes, beginning with William Perkin's discovery of Mauveine in the 1850s, have introduced brilliant shades that would once have been difficult or expensive to produce. Mauves, purples, greens and other striking colours can now appear with new intensity. Fashion responds enthusiastically. Victorian society may preach restraint in behaviour while wearing colours capable of being seen from another county. Not every dye is harmless. Some vivid greens used in wallpapers, fabrics and decorative goods have historically relied on arsenic compounds. Awareness of the danger grows during the 19th century, but debate continues over the scale of exposure and precisely how particular products affected health. Still, the phrase arsenic green is not metaphorical. Your wallpaper might genuinely be making questionable decisions. You move toward accessories. Gloves appear in delicate shades. Fans, parasols, ribbons, lace, buttons, trimmings. The quantity of detail available to wealthy consumers is astonishing. A fashionable woman's dress may depend on the labour of dressmakers and seamstresses working long hours, often for modest wages. The beautiful finished garment conceals another world of work. You see silk. Someone else sees stitches. This is a recurring pattern in your day. Luxury removes labour from sight without removing labour from existence. Perhaps you order a dress rather than purchasing anything ready-made. Measurements are taken, fabrics chosen, trimmings discussed. Several fittings may follow. Fashion changes quickly enough that keeping up requires constant attention. Magazines and illustrated publications spread styles. News travels from Paris, whose influence over elite fashion is enormous. London may be the centre of an empire. Paris can still make it anxious about sleeves. If you are a gentleman, your shopping may follow different routes. You visit a tailor, a bootmaker, a hatter, perhaps a gunmaker if country sports interest you. Though today there is no need to linger over that particular department. A gentleman's apparent simplicity can involve extraordinary craftsmanship. Fine leather boots are measured and shaped. A hat must fit correctly. A coat requires multiple fittings. Everything is supposed to look effortless after requiring considerable effort. Then there are jewellers. Behind secure counters, stones and precious metals concentrate wealth into objects small enough to disappear inside a pocket. Diamonds, pearls, emeralds, rubies, gold, silver. Jewellery can mark engagements, marriages, mourning, inheritance, and status. A piece may carry family history, or it may simply carry an impressive price. You might visit a prestigious jeweller such as Garrard, long associated with aristocratic and royal clients. The royal connection matters. Queen Victoria and her family exert enormous influence over taste. Court fashions, mourning practices, jewellery and social customs can ripple outward through elite society. You examine a brooch. Perhaps you purchase it. Perhaps the account is simply recorded and the bill sent later. Credit is common among wealthy customers. The need to carry large amounts of cash can therefore be reduced, particularly when dealing with familiar businesses. The shopkeeper knows your name. More importantly, he knows your address. Victorian trust becomes noticeably stronger when accompanied by a substantial house. Outside again, advertisements compete for your eye. Commercial advertising is expanding rapidly. Posters appear on walls. Newspapers carry notices. Businesses create recognizable names and packaging. Manufacturers understand that a product can be more desirable when consumers recognize its brand. The modern consumer world is beginning to take shape around you. Some Victorians dislike this commercial intensity. Critics worry about vulgarity, excess, and the corruption of taste. Consumers continue shopping. You enter a bookseller. Books are another important part of wealthy life. Your home may contain a substantial library, whether everyone reads the books or not. Possessing books signals education and cultivation. Publishing's booming. Novels reach enormous audiences. Charles Dickens has died only 5 years earlier, and his works remain immensely popular. Writers such as George Eliot, Anthony Trollope, and Thomas Hardy belong to the literary world surrounding your era. Serial publication has helped turn reading into a shared cultural experience. A novel can arrive in installments. Readers wait, speculate, discuss characters, complain about developments. Victorian society has invented many pleasures recognizable to you, including becoming emotionally distressed about fictional people while waiting for the next episode. Books can also be borrowed through circulating libraries. Moody's Select Library is particularly influential among middle-class and wealthy readers, and its purchasing choices can affect publishers and authors. Even reading has gatekeepers. You select a volume. Perhaps a travel account catches your attention. The empire fills Victorian bookshelves with descriptions of distant landscapes and peoples. Although these accounts often carry assumptions about race, civilization and British superiority that modern readers recognise as products of imperial ideology. To your Victorian self, the empire may feel permanent. Maps colour enormous territories as British possessions. Goods from those territories surround you. Tea from India, cotton from overseas, ivory and exotic woods in decorative objects, spices, jewels, artworks, plants. The empire becomes tangible through shopping. Yet the objects rarely explain the conditions under which they were obtained. A carved ornament sits silently on a table. A diamond sparkles without biography. A bolt of cotton does not describe the hands that picked it. Consumption makes distance beautiful. You continue through the streets. A furniture showroom offers another temptation. Victorian interiors demand constant feeding. Chairs, tables, cabinets, mirrors, screens, writing desks, beds, decorative objects. Styles range widely, drawing inspiration from Gothic, Renaissance, Rococo and other historical forms. The 19th century enjoys reviving previous centuries almost as much as it enjoys declaring itself modern. A wealthy house might contain Gothic details beside objects inspired by East Asian design. Classical forms and heavily upholstered furniture. Taste is eclectic, sometimes magnificently so. Sometimes the result resembles several historical periods trapped together during bad weather. You might also purchase goods at one of London's great exhibitions or specialist establishments selling imported wares. The international exhibitions of previous decades have encouraged fascination with global design and industrial manufacture. The Great Exhibition of 1851 remains within living memory, remembered as a spectacular display of industry, technology and imperial confidence. Its Crystal Palace itself has been relocated to Sydenham, where it continues as a place of entertainment and education. Victorian Britain is fascinated by objects because objects seem to demonstrate progress. Better machines, better manufacturing, more goods, more choice. A modern world can be purchased one polished item at a time, but quality remains important to elite consumers. Mass production makes many goods increasingly accessible to the middle classes. That creates a small problem for the rich. If everyone can buy something, it becomes less useful as a symbol of exclusivity. So wealthy consumers turn toward rarity, craftsmanship, provenance and custom work. The cycle is familiar. Mass production democratizes luxury. Luxury responds by becoming more complicated. You pause near a confectioner. Even sweets participate in the expanding consumer culture. Chocolate manufacturing is improving. Companies such as Cadbury and Fry are developing products for a growing market. Elaborate confectionery can be purchased as gifts or household treats. You may also encounter preserved fruits, biscuits and packaged foods whose production increasingly relies on industrial methods. Some goods now travel in tins. Canning has changed military supply, exploration and domestic food preservation, though early processes were cumbersome and sometimes unsafe. By your time, improvements have made canned foods more common. The Victorian pantry is slowly becoming more modern. You purchase something unnecessary, perhaps perfume, perhaps stationery, perhaps a small decorative object. It is difficult to be historically authentic without at least one object whose main purpose is occupying a table. Packages need not burden you for long. Servants or delivery systems can handle them. Many purchases are sent directly to your home. Again, money separates ownership from carrying. You emerge into the street with almost nothing in your hands and several new possessions on the way to your house. That may be the purest expression of luxury you have encountered today. The afternoon is advancing. Shopping has filled part of it pleasantly. But you cannot simply disappear into stores until dinner. Society has expectations. People must be visited. Cards must be left. Tea must be consumed. Introductions must be remembered. Invitations must be accepted or declined. A wealthy Victorian social life is supported by leisure, yet somehow manages to turn leisure into an administrative system. Your carriage is waiting. You climb inside. The packages will follow separately. Ahead lie drawing rooms filled with polished furniture, carefully chosen words and people quietly studying one another over cups of tea. You have spent the morning learning how money is earned, and the afternoon discovering how elegantly it can disappear. Now you are about to learn that maintaining your place among the rich requires another currency entirely. Attention! Your carriage stops again. This time before another handsome house whose front steps look almost indistinguishable from your own. You do not simply knock. First comes the card. The calling card is small enough to fit between 2 fingers. Yet it carries a surprising amount of social machinery. Your name is printed upon it, perhaps accompanied by a title or address depending on convention. It announces your presence without requiring you to announce yourself. A servant receives it. Now the delicate question begins. Is the person you are visiting at home? That phrase does not always mean what a modern visitor assumes. Someone may physically be inside the building and still be not at home socially. Servants understand the distinction. A household may receive visitors during established hours, while at other times the family is unavailable regardless of whether someone is currently sitting upstairs 3 yards from the door. Victorian society has perfected a remarkable technology. Being absent without leaving, if the lady of the house is receiving, you are admitted. You enter a drawing room where the furniture seems arranged for precisely this purpose. Chairs encourage conversation without encouraging excessive comfort. Small tables support cups, cards, and perhaps flowers. Curtains soften the light. The hostess rises. Greetings are exchanged. Nothing dramatic happens. That is the point. A successful social call is often brief, controlled and apparently effortless. You discuss acquaintances, recent events, perhaps a concert, perhaps travel, perhaps someone's health. You do not immediately launch into financial trouble, marital resentment, or a detailed account of your digestion. Civilization has boundaries. The length of the visit matters. Stay too briefly and you may appear cold. Stay too long and you become the historical equivalent of someone who arrives for coffee and is somehow still sitting there at dinner. Etiquette manuals offer guidance, but practice varies by period, class, and social circle. Historians should be cautious about treating every printed rule as something universally obeyed. Etiquette books describe ideals. Human beings provide the complications. Still, wealthy social life is undeniably structured by convention. Who may call upon whom? Who requires an introduction? When should cards be left? How quickly should invitations be answered? What happens after a marriage, death, or return from travel? The answers form a language. Knowing that language demonstrates belonging. A calling card can even communicate information through how it is delivered or, according to some etiquette traditions, through folded corners and other small signals. Scholars have questioned how universally some elaborate card customs were actually practiced, especially when later etiquette literature turns them into rigid systems. But cards themselves are unquestionably central. Your entrance hall may contain a tray holding those left by visitors. Names accumulate. Each card is a tiny reminder that society has noticed you, and that you must eventually notice society in return. The conversation moves toward tea. Afternoon tea is becoming increasingly fashionable among prosperous households during the 19th century. Though the ritual evolves over time rather than appearing fully formed on a single afternoon, tea arrives with milk, sugar, and perhaps bread, cakes, or small delicacies. The later image of Victorian afternoon tea with an absolutely fixed menu should not be projected too rigidly onto every household in 1875. Your hostess pours. This act can carry social significance because the tea service itself is valuable, and the hostess may personally control the ritual while servants assist. The silver gleams. Porcelain cups click softly against saucers. You take yours carefully. A spilled cup of tea on an expensive dress would introduce more excitement into the visit than anyone desires. Conversation resumes. Here you encounter one of the great engines of elite London. Gossip. Not necessarily malicious gossip. Sometimes merely information. Who has arrived in town? Who is engaged? Who is ill? who has been seen together, who is giving a dinner, whose son has behaved foolishly, whose daughter is considered charming, who has inherited money, who appears to have lost some. No newspaper can compete with a drawing room containing 6 observant people and insufficient entertainment. Reputation matters because elite society is interconnected. Marriage prospects can be affected by scandal. Business relationships may overlap with family connections. Political influence depends partly upon networks. A hostess with an excellent social circle can possess considerable informal power. Women excluded from many formal institutions may nevertheless shape relationships through dinners, visits, correspondence, and introductions. This does not erase legal or political inequality. It shows how influence adapts around restrictions. If you are a wealthy married woman, managing social relationships may form a significant part of your daily responsibilities. You maintain correspondence, remember birthdays, arrange visits, invite appropriate guests, avoid inappropriate combinations, guide daughters through society, participate in charitable work, support your husband's professional or political connections. None of this appears on a salary sheet, yet it can be exhausting. A successful dinner might require days of thought before anyone sits down. Who outranks whom? Who dislikes whom? Who must not be seated beside whom? Which gentleman can carry conversation? Which guest becomes unbearable after the second glass of wine? History records treaties and elections. It rarely records the hostess quietly preventing 2 cousins from discussing inheritance over soup. You finish your tea. Another visitor arrives. This changes the chemistry of the room. Introductions are made where appropriate. You cannot simply introduce everyone casually. Social rank, gender, and familiarity influence the proper form. A younger person is generally presented to an older or more distinguished one, and a gentleman to a lady, though precise conventions vary. Titles must be remembered. Names must be pronounced correctly. You must know whether to shake hands, bow slightly, or simply acknowledge someone. Your body becomes part of etiquette. Even eye contact carries meaning. Too familiar is dangerous, too distant is insulting. Victorian society has somehow transformed standing in a room into an examination for which nobody gives you the questions. You survive, naturally. You were raised for this. That is the advantage of belonging to wealth from childhood. A child in an affluent household learns social codes gradually. Nurses, governesses, tutors, and parents teach manners. Children observe adults. They learn how to speak, how to sit, what not to mention, and when silence is safer than curiosity. Education is not only mathematics and Latin, it is learning not to embarrass the family. The wealthy child's accent can become a social passport. Speech immediately communicates education, region, and class. Certain accents carry prestige while others attract prejudice. You may judge someone before knowing anything substantial about them simply because of how they pronounce a word. Humans remain remarkably efficient at inventing shortcuts for unfairness. Another cup is offered. You decline. Your visit has reached its natural end. You rise. Farewells are exchanged. The hostess says something pleasant about seeing you again. You say something equally pleasant. Both statements may even be true. Back in the carriage, you consult the next social obligation. Perhaps another visit. Perhaps merely leaving a card because the household is not receiving. A busy afternoon can involve moving from house to house without staying long anywhere. You are maintaining a network. Calling is especially important after particular events. Newly married couples, newcomers to a neighbourhood, and families returning to town may navigate formal patterns of visits and acknowledgements. Failing to reciprocate can carry meaning, so can declining invitations repeatedly. Eventually, people may stop asking. Social exclusion rarely requires an official announcement. The invitations simply become fewer. That can be devastating for someone whose identity depends upon society. Your wealth buys entrance into fashionable spaces only if fashionable people accept you. This is where new money encounters difficulty. Suppose your father has made an enormous fortune through manufacturing. You possess a mansion, carriages, servants, jewels. You can purchase the finest dinner service in London. But can you purchase invitations? Not directly. You need introductions, connections, marriage alliances, patronage, time. Perhaps your children will move more easily than you do. Perhaps your grandchildren will speak of the family's industrial origins as though they happened in prehistoric fog. Money can buy the stage. Acceptance decides whether you're allowed to perform on it. Your carriage reaches another house. This time, you leave a card without entering. Efficient. The Victorian version of saying hello while avoiding conversation. You move onward. There is charity too. Wealthy women in particular may spend significant time visiting charitable institutions, organising fundraising events, supporting schools, hospitals, missions or relief organisations. Motivations vary. Religious duty, compassion, social expectation, personal ambition, a desire to impose respectable behaviour upon poorer families, often several at once. Victorian philanthropy can achieve real good while carrying deeply paternalistic assumptions. The giver often expects gratitude, sobriety, cleanliness, church attendance and moral improvement. Help arrives with instructions. Some reformers investigate housing conditions and advocate serious structural changes. Others focus on individual morality. The debate you glimpsed from the carriage continues inside drawing rooms. Why are people poor? What does society owe them? What should government do? What should private charity do? There is no agreement. Your social circle discusses these questions while servants quietly replace the tea. The contrast can be uncomfortable if you allow yourself to notice it. Late afternoon approaches. The light outside begins to weaken. Gas lamps will soon glow across the city. Your visiting clothes have performed well. Your gloves remain respectable. Your calling cards have diminished slightly. You have exchanged dozens of sentences and revealed remarkably little. That too is a skill. But the social world you inhabit changes according to gender. For a wealthy woman, these drawing rooms can be central arenas of influence because many other arenas remain restricted. For a wealthy man, another institution waits beyond the domestic interior. Private, comfortable, almost entirely male. There, newspapers lie ready. Meals arrive without household responsibilities. Political information circulates, and acquaintances can be found without the inconvenience of formally calling upon them. Your carriage turns toward the centre of elite masculine London. Ahead, behind an imposing doorway, waits the gentleman's club. The carriage draws up near one of those London buildings that does not need a large sign to explain itself. The people who matter already know what it is. You step onto the pavement and approach the entrance of a gentleman's club, an institution that has become one of the defining spaces of elite male life in Victorian London. If you are a wealthy gentleman with the right background, profession, politics and connections, the club can function almost like a second home. In some respects, it may be more comfortable than your first one. Nobody here expects you to discuss curtains. You enter. The street noise falls away behind heavy doors. Inside, the atmosphere is controlled and masculine. Carpets soften footsteps. Dark, polished wood surrounds you. Leather chairs wait near fireplaces. Newspapers lie arranged for reading. Servants move discreetly through rooms where members talk, eat, write letters, smoke, or simply occupy expensive furniture with impressive concentration. Some clubs are old and exclusive, others are comparatively new. Each develops a character. Brookses and Whites carry long associations with aristocratic society. The Reform Club is linked to liberal politics. The Carlton Club serves as an important conservative centre. The Athenaeum attracts men associated with literature, science, scholarship and public distinction. Your choice of club can therefore say something about you. Politics, profession, social rank, interests, connections. It may also say that several existing members were willing to tolerate your presence. Admission is not necessarily simple. Many clubs elect members through ballots, and candidates can be rejected. The famous blackball becomes a symbol of this process. A single negative vote can sometimes be enough to cause serious embarrassment. Though rules differ among clubs, Imagine applying to join a comfortable building and discovering that an anonymous acquaintance has quietly dropped a small ball into a box to indicate that your personality should remain outside. Victorian social media is wonderfully physical. Once admitted, however, you gain access to a powerful network. You enter the reading room. Newspapers from Britain and abroad wait on tables. Periodicals provide political commentary, financial information, cultural news and reports from across the empire. You can sit for an hour reading without buying anything individually. More importantly, you can discuss what you've read with men who may influence what happens next. A member across the room could be an MP. Another might be a diplomat, a military officer, a lawyer, a banker, a landowner, a senior civil servant, perhaps a writer. Conversation becomes information. Information becomes opportunity. A rumour about a political appointment circulates. A railway investment is mentioned. Someone has heard that a minister intends to resign. Someone else insists this is nonsense. The first man has a cousin in government. The second man has a brother at the Foreign Office. Suddenly your quiet chair beside the fireplace feels less like leisure and more like an unofficial communications network. This is one reason clubs matter. Formal institutions govern Britain. Informal relationships help govern the formal institutions. You might encounter someone here without arranging an appointment. A few minutes of conversation can accomplish what several letters would otherwise require. Business happens while pretending not to be business. Politics happens while pretending to be lunch. Influence works best when everyone appears relaxed. You move toward the dining room. Club food can be excellent, and the convenience is considerable. A bachelor may dine here regularly. A married man may escape here when domestic arrangements are inconvenient. Members can order meals, drink wine and entertain certain guests according to club rules. The Reform Club in particular has become associated with culinary excellence under the influence of the celebrated chef Alexis Soyer in earlier decades. Soyer is already dead by your year, but his reputation lingers. He helped transform elite cooking while also becoming involved in charitable food schemes and military catering reform. Even the history of a club kitchen can unexpectedly lead towards social reform. Your lunch or refreshment arrives. Perhaps something cold, perhaps soup, perhaps meat, perhaps simply coffee and a glass of something stronger later. You do not need to ask who washed the plate. The institution, like your home, is designed to conceal labour behind service. Club servants know members' habits. A good waiter may remember what you drink. The porter recognises faces. Staff can become repositories of information simply because powerful men speak freely around people they socially regard as part of the furniture. That assumption can be dangerous. Servants have ears, so do walls. Metaphorically speaking, Victorian scandals occasionally grow from private behaviour becoming public knowledge. Privacy among the wealthy is never complete. You settle into a leather chair. Nearby, cigar smoke hangs in the air. Smoking is common in male social spaces, although rules vary by room and establishment. Cigars carry associations with leisure and status. Pipes are widespread in broader society. Tobacco has reached Britain through centuries of global trade, and by the Victorian period it is deeply embedded in masculine culture. Your lungs are less enthusiastic than your club. Medical understanding of smoking's long-term dangers is nowhere near modern levels. Some doctors criticise excessive tobacco use, but the full connection with cancers and cardiovascular disease will not be scientifically established for generations. So you smoke without the warning label. The wallpaper receives the warning instead. It slowly changes colour. Cards may appear too. Gambling has a long history in elite clubs, especially in the 18th and early 19th centuries. By your period. Some older traditions of spectacular aristocratic gambling have softened or shifted, though betting remains embedded in upper-class male culture. Horse racing provides endless opportunities. You might wager on a race, perhaps play cards, perhaps participate in private betting among acquaintances. Money moves strangely when people possess a great deal of it. A labourer's weekly wage might disappear from your pocket as casually as a small bet. That difference in scale is easy to forget from inside the club. Everything here normalises wealth. The men around you dress well. They speak confidently. They discuss estates, travel and investments. A person can spend an afternoon in such surroundings and begin to imagine that this is simply how everyone lives. Outside, clerks hurry back to offices. Inside, you order another drink. The club protects you not merely from bad weather. It protects you from perspective. Yet it is not only a playground. Political clubs can become serious organisational centres. The Reform Club and Carlton Club connect members with party networks at a time when British politics is changing rapidly. The electorate has expanded through the Reform Acts, including the major reform of 1867. Politics increasingly requires organisation beyond aristocratic patronage alone. Public meetings, campaigning, local associations, newspapers, voter registration. Parties are becoming more structured. The club remains useful because influential men can coordinate strategy in comfort. You may hear discussions about Benjamin Disraeli, currently Prime Minister. His Conservative government is pursuing domestic reforms, while also cultivating an imperial vision that will become increasingly associated with his political identity. Across the political divide stands William Gladstone, whose liberal leadership remains formidable. Victorian political disagreement can be intense. Fortunately, the presence of good chairs makes disagreement more civilized. Usually, your own political influence depends upon who you are. If you are a peer, you may sit in the House of Lords. If you are an elected MP, your wealth and social position may help support a political career, particularly because politics can demand time and resources. If you are simply a wealthy gentleman, you may still contribute through connections, donations, local influence and conversation. Women remain excluded from voting in parliamentary elections. They also remain excluded from most traditional gentlemen's clubs. That exclusion is not incidental. The club creates a male world partly by removing the domestic and social constraints associated with mixed company. Here, men can speak differently, drink differently, smoke, gamble, discuss matters considered unsuitable for ladies. The assumption that public affairs belong primarily to men is built directly into the architecture. For your wife, sister or daughter, there is no exact equivalent offering the same combination of privacy, networking, prestige and institutional influence. She may command a drawing room. She may organise dinners. She may shape charitable organisations. She may influence male relatives. But doors like this one remain closed. The inequality becomes particularly striking because wealthy women possess the resources that might otherwise create independence. A woman may be highly educated, intelligent, rich, socially connected, yet marriage law, convention and political exclusion restrict her choices. Even her clothing restricts movement more than yours. Your coat has pockets. Her dress may have pockets too. Sometimes substantial hidden ones reach through openings in the skirt. Despite the modern myth that Victorian women possess none, a small victory, still no parliamentary vote. You glance at the clock. The afternoon is passing. Perhaps you write a letter at one of the desks. Paper and ink are available. You might arrange dinner, respond to business, or send a message home. The club provides the practical conveniences of an office without forcing you to admit you're working. Some members practically live here. A bachelor with chambers nearby can dine at the club, read there, meet friends there and spend much of his waking life inside its rooms. Marriage may alter habits, or not. There are Victorian wives who would probably prefer their husbands to spend slightly less time enjoying club upholstery. The club becomes a source of jokes and criticism for precisely this reason. Domestic responsibilities can be escaped by walking through a doorway women cannot enter. You finish your conversation. Someone mentions a dinner tonight. Another man has tickets for the theatre later in the week. A political rumour remains unresolved. You make a mental note about an investment mentioned near the fireplace, while also remembering that financial advice delivered beside brandy has a long and distinguished record of being terrible. Then you rise. A servant brings your coat. Outside, London has begun moving toward evening. The light is fading. Gas lamps appear one by one. Shop windows glow. Carriages gather around fashionable streets. Behind you, the club continues humming with male conversation. You've spent only a few hours there, yet you've seen how privilege reproduces itself through proximity. The right men meet the right men. They exchange information. They offer introductions. They recognize one another. They create opportunities without necessarily calling them opportunities. But the moment you leave that male sanctuary, the imbalance becomes harder to ignore. The wealthy women in your household inhabit the same luxurious world, surrounded by servants, jewels, and beautiful rooms, yet their lives are bounded by rules you can often walk straight through. And before the household dresses for dinner, you're about to see just how narrow that gilded path can become. You return home as afternoon fades toward evening, and the difference between your freedoms and those of the wealthy women around you becomes difficult to miss. The house is luxurious. The restrictions are luxurious too, if you're a prosperous Victorian woman, especially one born into the upper middle classes. Your life can contain beautiful clothes, servants, travel, education, music, books, and long periods free from the exhausting physical labor experienced by poorer women. Yet privilege does not automatically produce independence. Sometimes it creates a more comfortable cage from childhood. Your future has been shaped by expectations about femininity, marriage, family, and respectability. A wealthy daughter may receive substantial education, particularly at home under a governess. You learn languages, music, drawing, literature, history, perhaps some mathematics. Religious instruction is important. Your precise education varies considerably according to family attitudes. Victorian Britain contains people who believe women should receive serious intellectual training, and others who worry that too much academic effort is somehow unsuitable for female minds. The female brain, apparently, must be protected from algebra while simultaneously managing a large household, a remarkable organ. Opportunities are changing, however. Women's education is expanding. Girton College at Cambridge has been founded, and Newnham is developing during this decade. Women's higher education remains controversial, but barriers are being challenged. You may read about these developments with excitement or alarm, perhaps both. If you marry, your legal position changes significantly. English common law has traditionally treated husband and wife as a single legal identity in many respects, with the husband's identity dominating under the principle known as coverture. For married women, control over property has therefore been severely restricted. Reform has begun. The Married Women's Property Act of 1870 represents an important step, allowing married women greater control over certain earnings and property acquired in particular circumstances. But full financial independence has not arrived. Further legislation in the 1880s will transform the position more substantially. So in your year, marriage can still mean surrendering significant economic control. This matters greatly among the rich because marriage involves property. A young woman may bring money into a marriage through inheritance, settlements, or family arrangements. Solicitors can create marriage settlements designed to protect portions of wealth or provide income. Families negotiate. Property is discussed. Future children matter. Inheritance matters. Love may matter deeply too. Victorians are not emotionless characters arranging marriages like corporate mergers. Personal affection appears throughout letters and diaries, but affection exists beside economics. A suitable husband is not merely handsome. He should possess the correct religion, manners, prospects, family and social standing. Preferably, he should also avoid gambling away the estate. Romance benefits from basic accounting. If you remain unmarried, your life takes another shape. The unmarried wealthy woman can sometimes enjoy greater legal control over property than her married counterpart. But society may treat spinsterhood with condescension. Marriage is expected. Motherhood is idealized. The respectable home is presented as a woman's natural sphere. Victorian culture often celebrates the image of the gentle wife creating moral peace within the household while her husband confronts the competitive public world. The reality is more complicated. Women work. Women write. Women organize. Women campaign. Women manage property. Women participate in businesses. Women engage in politics informally and increasingly demand formal rights. Even within your wealthy household, the supposedly delicate mistress of the home may manage an intimidating amount of administration. Menus, servants, household accounts, children, correspondence, charity, visitors, entertaining, clothing, travel arrangements, social obligations. If the house functions badly, people may blame her. If it functions perfectly, people may barely notice. A familiar management problem. Your relationship with servants is particularly complicated. A wealthy woman may supervise the housekeeper, who in turn manages much of the female domestic staff. In some households, the mistress becomes involved closely in expenses and hiring. In others, experienced senior servants exercise considerable independence. The boundaries vary, but servants constantly enter your private life. A lady's maid helps you dress. A nurse cares for young children. A governess educates older ones. Maids clean bedrooms. You possess authority over these women while also depending upon them. Class divides women who are otherwise restricted by the same broader legal and political culture in very different ways. A maid must earn wages. You may be forbidden or discouraged from pursuing paid work because working would suggest your family cannot support you. For the poor woman, labour is compulsory. For the wealthy woman, idleness can become compulsory. Neither condition necessarily feels liberating. Then comes motherhood. Victorian culture places enormous symbolic weight upon maternity. If you marry, producing children, particularly heirs within property-owning families, becomes a major expectation. Pregnancy and childbirth remain dangerous even for the wealthy. You can afford experienced doctors, attendants, warm rooms, and good food. That improves your circumstances. It does not eliminate risk. Understanding of infection is advancing rapidly during this period, but antiseptic practice is still spreading unevenly through medicine. Joseph Lister's work on antiseptic surgery has already attracted significant attention, yet acceptance is not universal. Medical progress, as you have already discovered with plumbing, rarely arrives everywhere at once. We will encounter health more closely later. For now, imagine the emotional contradiction. You are protected from many hardships by money, yet one of the central expectations placed upon your life repeatedly exposes you to a danger money cannot fully remove. Children, once born, may spend considerable time with nurses and governesses. This does not necessarily mean wealthy Victorian parents are emotionally distant. Some are. Others leave letters and diaries revealing deep affection. Parenting practices vary enormously, but servants can become major figures in a child's daily world. A nursery exists almost as a separate kingdom within the house. Children eat there, play there, learn there. They may appear downstairs at particular times, cleaned and dressed for parental inspection. The arrangement can seem formal to modern eyes. Yet children also make noise, break things, quarrel and resist bedtime. No historical period has successfully civilized the small child. As your children grow, gender divides their futures. A son from a wealthy family may attend boarding school, then university, perhaps entering the army, law, politics, church or family business. A daughter is more likely to remain under close family supervision until marriage. Her reputation must be protected. This affects movement. A young unmarried woman cannot always wander through London alone without risking social judgment. Chaperonage and conventions of respectable behaviour shape where she goes and with whom. The precise rules vary by situation and evolve through the century. Still, freedom is clearly unequal. Your brother can disappear into a club. You require an explanation. Your brother may travel with male friends. You may need a companion. Your brother can behave foolishly and perhaps become known as spirited. Your equivalent foolishness may become a family crisis. Double standards are not a Victorian invention, but the Victorians maintain them with considerable administrative enthusiasm. Not every woman accepts this quietly. By 1875, organised campaigns for women's suffrage are well established. Figures such as Lydia Becker have become prominent in the movement. John Stuart Mill famously presented a petition for women's suffrage to Parliament in the 1860s and argued publicly for equality. Campaigners hold meetings, publish arguments, collect signatures, lobby politicians. Progress is slow. Opponents insist politics would damage femininity or disrupt family life. Supporters point out the rather obvious fact that women are affected by laws whether or not they vote for the lawmakers. Property rights also attract activism, so do employment and educational opportunities. The Victorian woman is therefore living through a period of tension. Old ideals remain powerful. New possibilities are becoming visible. You can feel the walls while watching cracks appear in them. Charitable activity provides one socially acceptable route into public life. A wealthy woman can visit schools, hospitals, and poor districts, organize fundraising, support missions, and serve on charitable committees. This work may be genuinely demanding. It can expose sheltered women to poverty they would otherwise encounter only through carriage windows. Some become serious reformers. Housing reform is one example. Octavia Hill has already begun developing influential approaches to improving housing management for poorer Londoners, combining rent collection with efforts at social improvement. Her methods will be praised, criticised, and debated, but her work demonstrates how women can shape urban reform even without the parliamentary vote. Florence Nightingale, though associated most famously with the Crimean War, has also transformed public thinking about nursing, hospitals, and statistics. Women excluded from formal power find other routes into public influence. Writing is another. Women publish novels, essays, and journalism, sometimes under male names, sometimes openly. George Eliot, born Mary Ann Evans, has become one of the most respected novelists of the age. Her success makes it difficult to maintain the argument that serious intellectual work will cause the female mind to evaporate. You cross the drawing room. Perhaps you're the woman whose day we are imagining. Your evening dress waits upstairs. Soon a maid will arrange your hair. Jewels will be selected. Your appearance at dinner will suggest leisure, refinement, and ease. Few guests will see the legal restrictions surrounding your property. They will not see the pregnancies, the household accounts, the careful management of reputation, the hours of correspondence, the limited political rights. They will see silk. That is the peculiar cruelty of a gilded restriction. From the outside, it resembles privilege because privilege is genuinely there. The rooms are warm. The food is abundant. The servants answer bells. But comfort and freedom are not the same thing. You pause before the mirror as evening approaches. Downstairs, the dining room is being transformed. Silver is placed precisely. Glassware catches the growing gaslight. Napkins are folded. Wine is prepared. The cook is deep inside the most demanding hours of her day. Guests will soon arrive, and whether you are the master or mistress of this wealthy house, the next few hours will reveal Victorian status at its most theatrical. Dinner is not simply waiting. Dinner is being staged downstairs. The table has become almost architectural. White linen stretches across it with scarcely a wrinkle. Glassware catches the gaslight. Silver reflects small trembling flames. Flowers or decorative arrangements occupy carefully judged positions, impressive enough to be admired, but, ideally, not so enormous that two guests must conduct conversation through vegetation. Every object has been placed deliberately, and almost everyone who will receive credit for the evening has done very little of the physical work. The cook has been busy for hours. Kitchen maids assist with preparation. Footmen move between service areas and dining spaces. The butler supervises wine, silver, and the choreography of service. The housekeeper may have been involved in arrangements long before the first guest appears. Meanwhile, you change clothes. Dinner demands another costume. If you are a gentleman, evening dress is darker and more formal than daytime clothing. Tailcoats, white shirts, waistcoats, and carefully arranged neckwear belong to the world of fashionable evening society, with precise conventions shifting through the century. If you are a woman, evening dress can expose more of the shoulders and upper chest than respectable daytime clothing permits. Victorian modesty is therefore wonderfully dependent upon the clock. An ankle may provoke attention in one context, while an evening gown calmly reveals shoulders beneath a chandelier. Society does not eliminate contradictions. It gives them schedules. Your maid fastens the dress. Jewellery follows. Hair is checked. Downstairs, a carriage arrives. Then another. Guests enter the hall carrying cold air from the street. Coats and wraps are taken. Names are announced. You greet everyone. The drawing room begins filling with controlled conversation. Dinner cannot start immediately. People must assemble. Late arrival is irritating, though arriving too early can be nearly as awkward. The ideal guest appears with the mysterious precision of someone who has spent half an hour calculating how not to look punctual. Then comes one of the hostess's most delicate responsibilities. Pairing people for the movement into dinner. Rank matters. Marital status matters. Relationships matter. A formal dinner may observe precedence carefully, with the most distinguished guests receiving particular attention. You cannot simply shout that everyone should find a chair. This is civilization. The dining room doors open. You enter. Place cards may help determine seating, especially at larger dinners. The arrangement is strategic. A skilled hostess separates people who see too much of one another and brings together those likely to converse well. Married couples may be seated apart. Enemies should preferably not share elbow space. Two painfully shy people together can create a silence dense enough to alter the room's atmospheric pressure. Your hostess has considered all of this. Nobody should notice. That is the theme of your wealthy life. The better something is organized, the less visible the organization becomes. You sit. Servants begin moving. By the 1870s, elite dining practices are changing. Earlier in the century, service à la française, in which many dishes are placed on the table together, had been common in fashionable dining. Now service à la russe is increasingly influential. Under this style, courses arrive sequentially and servants present or serve dishes rather than crowding the table with everything at once. The transition is gradual, and households vary, but the newer style allows food to arrive hotter and makes the table available for elaborate decoration. It also increases the importance of skilled servants. Your dinner unfolds course by course. Soup may begin the meal, fish follows, then entree or substantial meat dishes, roasts, vegetables, game in season, entremets, puddings, desserts. The exact sequence varies, and surviving grand menus can be spectacular. You are not expected to consume a full portion of everything. This is fortunate. Otherwise, elite Victorian dining would qualify as an endurance sport. French culinary language remains fashionable. A menu may be written partly or entirely in French, particularly at sophisticated dinners. French cooking carries prestige. Sauces require skill. Presentation matters. The wealthy British dining room may therefore express national confidence, while quietly admitting that France knows what to do with dinner. Your cook's competence is being tested below stairs. Timing is everything. A sauce can split. Meat can overcook. A pudding can collapse. A servant can stumble. None of these disasters should reach you. The kitchen may be filled with heat, noise and urgent instructions, while upstairs you hear only the soft movement of plates. You lift your spoon. Even cutlery is governed by convention. Different utensils may accompany different courses. The elaborate multiplication of specialized forks and spoons becomes especially associated with formal dining culture during the 19th century and beyond. If uncertain, watching others is wise. The universal survival strategy of formal dinners has changed very little. Wine arrives. Different wines may accompany different stages of the meal. Sherry, claret, champagne, port, madeira. The selection depends upon household taste and occasion. Wine knowledge can itself demonstrate sophistication. A gentleman who understands vintages, cellars and proper service gains another small area in which to judge gentlemen who do not. Humans are extraordinarily creative when constructing hierarchies. Conversation flows, or tries to. You cannot simply speak to the same person throughout dinner. Polite attention shifts. Politics may be discussed cautiously depending on company. Literature, travel, mutual acquaintances, the theatre, art, recent news, gossip appears, naturally, though ideally wearing respectable clothing. Certain topics are avoided in mixed company. Sexual matters remain heavily veiled. Open discussion of bodily functions is unwelcome. Money can also be delicate. Everyone may know that a guest possesses an enormous fortune. Asking exactly how enormous would be vulgar. Wealth should be visible without being counted aloud. The servants continue moving behind you. Their presence creates another social rule. You're expected, to some extent, to behave as though they are not participating in the conversation. This does not mean you literally fail to see them. You give instructions. You accept food. But intimate conversation in front of servants can create risks. A wise household remembers that domestic staff inhabit extensive informal networks. Servants have relatives, friends, future employers. They talk. News travels below stairs just as gossip travels above. Sometimes the two networks intersect. A scandal does not need a telegraph if a footman changes employment. The main courses eventually give way to sweets and dessert. Victorian puddings can be rich, elaborate and gloriously unconcerned with modern nutritional advice. Cream, sugar, eggs, pastry, preserved fruit, custards, jellies, ices may appear in wealthy settings. Producing frozen desserts without electric refrigeration requires access to ice and careful preparation, which makes them particularly impressive. Ice itself has become an international commodity. Large quantities are harvested in colder regions and transported for urban consumption. While artificial ice production is developing, imagine importing winter so that your guest can eat dessert. That is commitment. Eventually, according to established upper-class custom, women may withdraw to the drawing room while men remain behind over wine. The separation is significant. The ladies leave. The gentlemen settle again. Port may circulate. Cigars might appear later depending upon household practice. Conversation can change once women are gone. Politics becomes more direct. Business may surface. Stories considered unsuitable for female ears emerge. The assumption is that men require a period of masculine conversation after dinner. The women, meanwhile, gather in the drawing room. They talk too, probably with equal efficiency, perhaps more. The gender division creates two temporary social worlds inside the same house. For the men, drinking too much remains a possibility. Victorian ideals of gentlemanly self-control exist alongside a robust drinking culture. Excess is criticised, particularly as temperance movements grow, but alcohol remains central to elite hospitality. A gentleman who becomes visibly drunk at dinner risks embarrassment. The correct amount is enough to enjoy yourself while maintaining the appearance that enjoyment has not affected your nervous system. Eventually the men rejoin the women. Coffee or tea may be served. Music perhaps follows. A young woman might perform at the piano. Someone sings. Cards may be played. Conversation resumes, if this is a large formal evening. Additional guests might even arrive after dinner for entertainment. The house glows with gaslight. Jewellery catches the illumination. Silks rustle. Voices rise and soften. From inside the drawing room, the entire evening seems elegant. Below stairs, another reality waits. Mountains of dirty plates, greasy pans, stained cloths, half-empty glasses, food scraps, kitchen heat, servants who have been working since long before you dressed for dinner. The performance upstairs produces an enormous aftermath downstairs. Your guests do not see it. Carriages begin arriving to collect them. Farewells unfold. Thank you. Such a lovely evening. The cook receives no applause from the departing guests. The scullery maid certainly does not. Yet tomorrow people may discuss the dinner. The food was excellent. The flowers were beautiful. The company delightful. The hostess has succeeded. Her success depends upon dozens of invisible acts performed by people whose names many guests do not know. You stand near the entrance as the final carriage departs. The house grows quieter, but your evening's not necessarily finished. London after dark offers another stage, one even brighter and more public than your dining room. Theatres are filling. Opera boxes glow. Music halls draw enormous crowds from other social classes. Balls continue late into the night. Restaurants and supper rooms remain alive with conversation, and in those illuminated spaces, where actors become celebrities and audiences inspect one another almost as carefully as the stage. Entertainment carries its own risks. A glance can become gossip. A meeting can become rumour. A rumour can become scandal. Your coat is brought. Another carriage waits. The night outside is cold and smoky. You step toward it, leaving behind the remains of dinner and entering Victorian London's glittering world after dark. The carriage rolls into a London transformed by darkness. The city has not become quiet. It has become illuminated. Gas lamps burn along important streets, their flames glowing through the smoky air. Shop windows shine. Carriage lamps bob through traffic. Public houses cast warm rectangles onto wet pavement, while theatres announce themselves with brighter pools of light and crowds gathered beneath their entrances. Your destination glows ahead. Perhaps tonight it is the opera, perhaps a fashionable theatre, perhaps later there will be a ball. For wealthy Londoners, evening entertainment is not simply about watching. It is about being watched. You step from the carriage. Your evening clothes now make perfect sense beneath artificial light. Jewellery sparkles. Silk responds beautifully to movement. Black evening coats give gentlemen a uniform appearance that makes women's dresses seem even more colourful by comparison. People arrive around you. Names are recognised. Faces remembered. A woman appears wearing something magnificent. Several other women notice immediately while pretending not to. A gentleman escorts someone whose identity produces quiet interest. You have not even reached your seat, and the entertainment has already begun. Inside, theatres can be visually spectacular. London's theatrical culture is thriving in the 1870s. Improvements in stage machinery, lighting and scenery allow increasingly elaborate productions. Theatre buildings themselves are changing too. Gaslight has transformed performance compared with earlier candlelit stages, though it brings serious risks. Fire is one of them. A Victorian theatre combines open flames, timber, fabric, painted scenery and large crowds. This is not a reassuring recipe. Theatre fires occur throughout the 19th century, encouraging gradual improvements in safety regulations and building design. For tonight, however, nobody wishes to dwell upon that. Your box awaits. A private box offers an excellent view of the stage. More importantly, it offers an excellent view of you. Opera and theatre boxes function partly as social displays. The audience can inspect who attends, who sits together and what they wear. You raise opera glasses. Perhaps you look toward the stage. Perhaps not. Across the auditorium, someone recognizes you. A small nod follows. You return it. The curtain rises. The performance begins. Victorian theatre covers an enormous range. Shakespeare remains popular. Melodrama attracts large audiences. Comedy thrives. Spectacular productions employ elaborate sets. Actors and actresses can become genuine celebrities. Henry Irving is emerging as one of the great theatrical figures of the period. Only a few years from now, his association with the Lyceum Theatre will become legendary. Ellen Terry will become another enormous star. The modern culture of celebrity is already taking recognizable form. Audiences follow performers. Newspapers discuss them. Portrait photographs circulate. Rumours attach themselves to famous names. A successful actor can become known far beyond the theatre itself. Yet acting carries complicated social status. Admiration does not always equal respectability, particularly for women. Actresses may be celebrated publicly while subjected to moral suspicion privately. The boundary between fame and scandal is thin. You watch the stage. Gas jets illuminate scenery. Painted backgrounds create imagined worlds. Costumes shimmer. Music rises. For a few hours, wealthy London pays to pretend it is somewhere else. This is impressive, considering that wealthy London already spends much of its day pretending not to notice large parts of London. During an interval, conversation resumes. Now the audience becomes the performance. You leave the box or receive acquaintances. News moves quickly. Someone mentions an engagement. Another person has apparently lost money. A marriage is unhappy. A politician has been seen somewhere interesting. Nobody knows whether the story is true. This does not prevent anyone from improving it. Victorian scandal can travel through drawing rooms, clubs, newspapers, and private letters with astonishing speed. The press is increasingly powerful. Some publications report society news, others specialize in gossip or sensational stories. A wealthy person cannot assume that private misconduct will remain private forever. Defamation law provides some protection, but a reputation can suffer long before a court settles anything. For women, the consequences of sexual scandal can be especially severe. The double standard you encountered earlier remains firmly in place. A wealthy man might survive behavior that socially destroys a woman. Adultery can damage both, but not equally. A woman's respectability is treated as fragile property belonging partly to her entire family. This gives gossip enormous power. You therefore learn discretion. Who enters your carriage? Who visits your house? Who sees you speaking privately? Who receives your letters? The smallest details can acquire meanings you never intended. Even flirtation has rules. At a ball, these rules become almost musical. Imagine now that the theatre ends and your evening continues at a grand private ball. Your carriage joins a line outside a large house. The street becomes clogged with vehicles. Coachmen wait. Footmen open doors. Inside, rooms blaze with light. Flowers decorate staircases. Musicians prepare. Guests fill drawing rooms in formal evening clothes. A ball can be extraordinarily expensive to host. You need space, food, wine, musicians, servants, lighting, decorations, perhaps temporary alterations to rooms. A wealthy family may transform its house for a single night, then spend the following day returning everything to normal. Status is expensive because status enjoys events. You enter the ballroom. The temperature rises almost immediately. Hundreds of candles or gas flames, depending on the setting, combine with crowded bodies and heavy clothing. The women may be wearing layered gowns. The men are dressed formally. Everyone looks elegant. Everyone is slowly becoming warmer than elegance recommends. Dancing requires knowledge. The waltz, once considered scandalously intimate earlier in the century, is now well established in respectable society, though social conservatives have not vanished. Quadrilles and other dances remain familiar. You cannot simply improvise enthusiastically in the center of the floor. Dance has patterns, partners, etiquette. A young unmarried woman's dance card may record promised partners. This creates structure and, conveniently, evidence. A gentleman asks. She accepts or declines according to circumstance. Repeated dances with the same person can attract notice. Too much attention suggests interest. Interest suggests possibility. Possibility awakens every mother in the room. The Victorian marriage market is never officially called a market in polite conversation. It simply contains eligible people, family strategy, financial calculations, and intense competition. Completely different. If you're a young wealthy woman, a ball can be thrilling. Music, movement, attention, new acquaintances, yet your freedom remains supervised. Parents and chaperones observe. Reputation follows every interaction. You may speak with a potential husband in a crowded room, but privacy is limited. Courtship often unfolds through repeated meetings, family approval, correspondence, and carefully managed opportunities for conversation. A wealthy young man has greater room for experimentation. Again, the imbalance is obvious. You dance, the room turns, silk moves around you. Music keeps time. For a moment, Victorian London seems almost weightless. Then you remember your shoes. Fashion has reasserted gravity. Later comes supper. Food appears in another room. Cold meats, sandwiches, sweets, jellies, pastries, fruits. Champagne and other refreshments may be offered depending upon the scale of the event. Servants continue working while guests recover enough energy to dance again. The evening stretches late. Midnight passes. This is not unusual for fashionable entertainment. A wealthy schedule can shift dramatically when society is active. You may have risen relatively late this morning precisely because the previous evening ended late. Servants do not necessarily receive the same luxury. Someone must remain awake to admit you. Someone may need to help you undress. Someone will begin cleaning before you have finished sleeping. Entertainment transfers exhaustion downward. Beyond elite balls and theatres lies another London nightlife. Music halls attract broad audiences with songs, comedy and variety entertainment. By the 1870s, music hall culture is flourishing. Your social circle may regard some venues as beneath respectable elite taste. Though adventurous, wealthy men sometimes cross class boundaries in search of entertainment, restaurants and hotels also provide increasingly sophisticated dining experiences. The Langham Hotel, opened in the 1860s, represents the new grandeur of luxury hospitality. London is developing public spaces where wealth can enjoy services once associated more strongly with private households and clubs. The city is becoming a consumer playground after dark. But darkness also changes its risks. Crime is a constant subject of Victorian anxiety. Newspapers report robberies, assaults and sensational murders. Wealthy people worry about pickpockets and thieves in crowded places. Your carriage and servants offer protection, but not immunity. Jewellery attracts attention. A gentleman walking alone late at night may feel less secure away from fashionable streets. The Metropolitan Police have existed since 1829, and uniformed constables are now a familiar presence. Yet policing remains limited compared with modern surveillance systems. No cameras follow you. No telephone in your pocket summons immediate assistance. Your security depends upon people, lighting, location and caution. Eventually, you have had enough. The final dance ends. Farewells begin. Your carriage is called from the long queue outside. You step into cold night air, almost grateful for it after the overheated ballroom. The door closes. London slides past the window again. Gas lamps, dark alleys, late workers, policemen, public houses approaching closing or still serving, according to their licenses and circumstances. A newspaper seller perhaps lingering where crowds remain. You sink into the seat. Your ears still carry music. Your clothes smell faintly of perfume, smoke and crowded rooms. You have spent an evening surrounded by pleasure. Yet beneath the glitter, several quiet anxieties remain. Fire, crime, reputation, exhaustion, disease. And there is another vulnerability money cannot eliminate. Your body. You can purchase the finest physician. You can summon specialists. You can afford medicines, nurses, fresh food and travel to healthier climates. But Victorian medicine is still Victorian medicine. And when your carriage finally carries you back toward the warmth of your house, you return to a world where even the richest person in London can wake tomorrow with a fever no fortune fully understands. The carriage brings you home, and once the front door closes, the night's glitter begins to fall away in layers. Jewellery is removed. Buttons are undone. Hair is released from its careful arrangement. Your maid helps with the evening clothes, inspecting delicate fabric for stains or damage before putting everything away. Eventually you are left with the simpler fact of your own body. And in 1875, the body remains a dangerous thing to possess. Money gives you advantages almost everywhere. You eat better than most Londoners. You live in larger rooms. You can escape the most overcrowded districts. You have servants to keep your surroundings clean. If illness arrives, you can summon respected physicians rather than depending upon charity or simply hoping the problem disappears. Yet wealth cannot carry you outside 19th century medicine. Your doctor may be highly educated. He may also lack knowledge that a modern medical student considers fundamental. This is a transitional period. Some older theories are being overturned. New discoveries are transforming medicine. But those discoveries are not instantly accepted or uniformly applied. Germ theory is gaining ground through the work of scientists such as Louis Pasteur and others investigating microorganisms and disease. Joseph Lister has already demonstrated antiseptic surgical methods inspired partly by these emerging ideas. His use of carbolic acid has shown that infection after surgery can be dramatically reduced. Still, medical practice varies. Not every doctor accepts the same theories. Not every hospital uses the same procedures. The future is arriving one argument at a time. You may have a family physician who visits your house. This is itself a luxury. No crowded waiting room. No journey across the city while feverish. A servant opens the door and the doctor comes upstairs. He asks questions, examines you, perhaps takes your pulse, looks at your tongue, listens to your chest. The stethoscope has existed for decades and is increasingly familiar in medical practice. Temperature measurement is also becoming more systematic during the 19th century. Diagnosis is becoming more scientific. Treatment often has farther to travel. Many medicines available to you are limited in effectiveness. Some are dangerous. Opium and its preparations are widely used. Laudanum, a mixture containing opium, can be prescribed for pain, coughing, diarrhea, sleeplessness, and other complaints. It works in certain respects. It can also produce dependence and fatal overdose. Regulation is much weaker than you expect from modern pharmacy. Medicines containing powerful substances may be easily obtained. Victorian households therefore possess remedies capable of soothing a cough and creating an entirely new problem. Morphine is available too. Chloroform and ether have transformed surgery by making anesthesia possible. This is an enormous achievement, only a generation earlier. Major operations could involve conscious patients enduring unimaginable pain. Now, a wealthy patient can undergo surgery without remaining awake through the procedure. Queen Victoria herself famously used chloroform during childbirth, helping make anesthesia more socially acceptable. But anesthesia introduces its own dangers. Dosage is less precise than modern practice. Monitoring is primitive. There are no electronic machines quietly displaying oxygen saturation and heart rhythm. The anaesthetist depends heavily upon observation and experience. If surgery is required, your money allows you to seek a leading surgeon. That improves your odds. It does not make the operating room safe. Antisepsis is improving outcomes, but infection remains feared. Internal surgery is especially dangerous. Blood transfusion techniques are not yet reliably developed for routine use, and blood groups remain undiscovered. A surgeon can control bleeding only with the tools and knowledge available. You would prefer not to need surgery. Your teeth provide another reason for concern. Dental care exists and is becoming increasingly professional. But dentistry can still be unpleasant. Tooth decay affects rich and poor alike, though diet changes the pattern. Your access to sugar may actually give your teeth additional opportunities for betrayal. Dentists can extract damaged teeth. Fillings use materials including gold and amalgam. Artificial teeth are available. Earlier in the century, dentures sometimes incorporated human teeth, including teeth collected from dead soldiers after major battles. By your time, porcelain teeth and improved dental materials offer more civilized alternatives. Still, the historical phrase Waterloo teeth has not been invented by someone trying to make bedtime relaxing. You brush your teeth, perhaps using tooth powder. Commercial dental products are developing, but oral hygiene practices vary. A wealthy smile may therefore be expensive without being perfect. Then there is the air. You live in one of the richest cities on earth. You also breathe it. Coal smoke surrounds London. Fog combines with pollution to create dense episodes that can irritate lungs and reduce visibility. Victorians often call severe urban fogs London particulars. The romantic image of a carriage disappearing through yellow fog becomes considerably less romantic when you remember that the yellow contains combustion products. Respiratory illnesses are common. Tuberculosis remains one of the great killers of the 19th century. Its bacterial cause will not be identified until the following decade. For now, people debate heredity, environment, constitution and contagion. A wealthy sufferer may be sent away from London. Fresh air, sea air, mountain air, a warmer climate. Travel becomes treatment. Sometimes rest and better nutrition genuinely help. Sometimes the disease progresses regardless. Consumption, as tuberculosis is often called, carries a strange cultural image in the 19th century, particularly in literature. Paleness and thinness can become romanticized. The actual disease is far less poetic. Money softens the bed. It cannot persuade the lungs. Other infectious diseases remain dangerous. Scarlet fever, measles, diphtheria, typhoid, smallpox. Children are particularly vulnerable. Vaccination against smallpox has existed for decades and has become a major public health measure. Though compulsory vaccination generates resistance and controversy, Victorian arguments about state authority and medical intervention can sound unexpectedly familiar. Some oppose compulsion, others emphasize collective protection. The debate becomes emotional. Meanwhile, smallpox remains entirely uninterested in political philosophy. Sanitation offers one of the clearest examples of improvement. The great sewer works beneath London have reduced the direct contamination that once poured into the central Thames. But your individual house can still contain dangerous plumbing. A fashionable bathroom does not guarantee safe drains. Victorian builders and sanitary reformers increasingly focus on traps, ventilation and proper pipe design because foul smells and sewer gases can enter homes. The exact relationship between smell and disease remains confused during this transition from miasma theories toward germ theory. Ironically, efforts to eliminate foul smells sometimes improve health, even when the explanation is wrong. History occasionally allows people to reach the correct action by the wrong road. Your water closet is another symbol of progress. Flushing toilets are becoming increasingly common in affluent homes. They are convenient. They also increase the volume of wastewater entering drainage systems. Technology solves one problem and politely introduces itself to another. If you are a wealthy woman, childbirth remains perhaps the most serious recurring medical danger. Doctors increasingly attend elite births, though midwives continue to play important roles across society. Anesthesia can reduce pain. Good nutrition and clean surroundings help, but postpartum infection remains a threat. The ideas associated with hand washing and infection prevention have not yet become universal medical habit. Ignaz Semmelweis demonstrated decades earlier that hand hygiene could dramatically reduce maternal deaths in hospital settings. Yet his conclusions met resistance. By 1875, germ theory is making the underlying logic easier to understand, but practice still varies. The cruelest part is that wealthy women are not necessarily protected simply by having fashionable doctors. Prestige does not sterilize hands. Infants face risks too. Even in prosperous families, childhood mortality is far higher than you consider normal. Family photographs may include children who will not reach adulthood. Mourning customs therefore remain part of ordinary life. Black clothing, jet jewellery, letters edged in black, periods of formal mourning. The rituals can seem excessive to you until you remember how frequently Victorian families experienced death. Grief has etiquette because grief is common. Mental distress receives much less sensitive treatment. The language of nervous disorders, hysteria, melancholy and exhaustion reflects contemporary medical assumptions, many heavily shaped by gender and class. A wealthy person experiencing severe psychological problems may consult physicians, travel, rest, or enter a private institution. Some private asylums provide comfortable surroundings, others are restrictive. Diagnosis is inconsistent. Treatments can include rest, diet, bathing, and various physical or moral therapies. Modern categories should not be projected carelessly backward. Victorian doctors classify minds differently from modern psychiatry. Still, anxiety, depression, grief and trauma certainly exist. Money does not remove them. In some cases, the demands of elite life create their own pressures: reputation, marriage, inheritance, family conflict, financial anxiety, the need to appear composed. You're surrounded by people while often expected to reveal very little. A beautifully furnished drawing room can contain a profoundly unhappy person. Perhaps that is another lesson of your day. Luxury changes suffering more easily than it eliminates suffering. Your bedroom fire is lower now. The house feels quiet. You wash. A glass of water waits nearby. Perhaps you take some harmless preparation before sleep. Hopefully harmless. Victorian medicine is fond of tonics. Patent medicines are advertised for an astonishing range of conditions. Some contain alcohol, opiates, or other active ingredients. Claims can be extravagant. A bottle may promise relief from weakness, nerves, digestive trouble, and nearly every other inconvenience short of taxation. You are wise to remain skeptical. Yet if you become seriously ill, you will still call the doctor. You have access to the best medicine your century can provide. That phrase is both reassuring and slightly terrifying. You settle briefly near the fire, but somewhere below, servants remain awake. Your clothes must be handled. The entrance must be secured. The kitchen must recover from dinner. Tomorrow's fires will need attention before you rise. You have spent the evening confronting the limits of wealth over your own body. Now another limit becomes visible. Your comfort cannot exist without bodies belonging to other people. Tired bodies, working bodies, bodies climbing stairs while you sleep, bodies carrying coal, water and trays. And if you follow those back stairs downward, away from the soft bedroom and toward the hidden rooms of the household, the luxurious mansion begins to look very different indeed. The back staircase is narrower than the one your guests use. That difference tells you almost everything. The grand staircase exists to be seen. It has polished wood, generous proportions, perhaps a runner beneath your feet and carefully arranged lighting. The servant stairs exist to move human beings efficiently between work. You descend. The temperature changes. Decoration thins. The house you thought you knew begins revealing its machinery again. Somewhere below, plates are being cleaned. Water splashes into a basin. A door closes. Footsteps cross a passage. The servant's working day has not ended simply because your social evening has. For some, it began before dawn. Domestic service is one of the largest sources of employment for women in Victorian Britain. In London, the demand created by wealthy and middle-class households draws enormous numbers of young women into service. Many come from rural districts or poorer families. A position in a respectable household can provide wages, food and lodging. It can also provide exhausting hours, limited freedom and almost no privacy. Your mansion may employ an entire hierarchy. At the upper level of domestic authority stands the housekeeper. She may supervise female servants, oversee stores and linen, manage household routines and communicate directly with the mistress of the house. Her position carries responsibility and status. She may possess her own room or sitting area depending upon the household. The butler occupies a similarly senior place among male servants. He supervises aspects of dining service, wine, silver and other male staff. He must be reliable. The wine cellar is valuable. So is the silver. A dishonest butler is the subject of Victorian anxiety precisely because a trusted butler has access to so much. Your butler may know the household's habits better than some members of the family do. He knows when you dine, who visits, which wine you prefer, whether a particular guest stays too late. He knows when bills arrive. Perhaps he knows when money's becoming tight. Discretion is part of the profession. Below these senior servants come others whose positions vary according to the size and style of the household. Footmen serve meals, answer doors, carry messages and accompany carriages. Their appearance matters because they are visible to guests. Height can even influence desirability in elite households. A pair of similarly tall footmen looks impressive. Yes, you can apparently turn human symmetry into status. Male servants often cost more to employ than female servants partly because of wages, clothing and taxation in earlier periods. So maintaining several male servants can itself signal wealth. Then there are the women whose work keeps the interior functioning. Housemaids clean bedrooms and reception rooms. They make beds, sweep, dust, carry water, empty slops, attend fires. The work is repetitive and physical. Imagine cleaning a large Victorian room filled with carved furniture, ornaments, heavy curtains and patterned surfaces while coal soot continuously attempts to undo everything. Minimalism would have been a gift to the housemaid. Victorian taste does not provide it. A lady's maid occupies a more specialised position. She attends closely to her mistress. Clothing, hair, jewellery, packing, personal errands. She may travel with the family. Because she works within intimate private spaces, trust matters greatly. A valet performs similar personal duties for a gentleman. These servants may receive cast-off clothing as part of the informal benefits of employment, and good garments can be valuable. Then comes the kitchen hierarchy. The cook holds authority within her domain. In a large household, kitchen maids assist her. At the bottom may stand a scullery maid, often one of the youngest and least experienced servants. Her world contains the consequences of everyone else's comfort. dirty pots, grease, ash, water, scrubbing, heavy equipment, long hours, heat. If you want to locate the least glamorous point in a magnificent dinner, follow the plates backward. Eventually, you reach the scullery maid. She may have risen extremely early. Her hands are frequently wet. Her clothing is practical rather than decorative. She is unlikely to be visible when guests praise the household. The invisibility is intentional. Servants are often expected to move through back corridors and stairs precisely so family members and visitors encounter as little domestic labour as possible. A tray seems to arrive. A room seems to clean itself. A fire seems to remain alive. This is the illusion you have enjoyed all day. But invisibility has a psychological cost. Imagine living inside another family's home while being expected to disappear whenever possible. Your workplace is also your residence. Your employer can influence your schedule, clothing, behaviour, and sometimes relationships. Time off is limited. Visitors may be restricted. Romantic relationships can create problems. Pregnancy outside marriage can destroy a female servant's position and reputation. The household protects its respectability more fiercely than it protects her future. Servants usually depend upon references, sometimes called characters, from previous employers. A good reference helps secure the next position. A bad one can be disastrous. This gives employers considerable power. Leaving after a quarrel may mean losing not merely your wages but your home and your ability to obtain respectable employment elsewhere. You possess options because you possess money. The servant possesses a reference. The imbalance is enormous. Yet servants are not passive figures. They negotiate, complain, resign, change households, build friendships, share information. Some steal small items or food. Some manipulate rules. Some become deeply loyal to families. Others count the days until they can leave. The relationships are human and therefore inconsistent. Victorian memoirs contain examples of affection between employers and servants, but also resentment and abuse. You should distrust any simple picture. The loyal servant devoted entirely to the family is partly a cultural ideal. The cruel employer is equally insufficient as a universal model. Reality changes from house to house. Wages vary by role, experience and location. Senior servants can earn respectable sums compared with junior staff, while young maids receive much less. But cash wages alone do not tell the whole story because servants often receive lodging and food. This can make domestic service attractive compared with certain alternatives available to working-class women. Factory work, sewing, laundry and casual employment can also be harsh. A respectable domestic position may offer greater security. Security, however, comes at the cost of independence. The bell can ring at almost any time. Remember that bell. Earlier it seemed like a clever piece of Victorian technology. From down here, it sounds different. You are eating. Ring. You are repairing something. Ring. You have finally sat down. Ring. Someone upstairs requires hot water. A message delivered. A lamp adjusted or an object that may be approximately 6 feet from their own hand. The bell does not care that your feet hurt. Servants may work from early morning until late evening with breaks determined by household routine. Large formal dinners extend the day. Balls can keep staff awake deep into the night, and wealthy families travel when you leave London for a country estate or seasonal visit. Some servants accompany you. Packing itself becomes an operation. Trunks, clothing, toiletries, jewellery, documents, children's belongings, special equipment. Your movement generates work before you've moved anywhere. The servants' hall provides one place where the household staff can form their own community. Meals may be taken together according to rank. Even below stairs, hierarchy persists. Senior servants expect deference from junior ones. The butler and housekeeper occupy elevated positions. A footman does not necessarily socialise as an equal with a scullery maid. Class has reproduced itself inside class. Humans seem unable to enter a room without eventually determining who sits nearest the head of the table. Servants gossip too, naturally. Your family provides material. Perhaps they discuss your guests, perhaps your clothes, perhaps the argument you assumed nobody heard. Servants know which marriages are unhappy, which children are difficult, which relative drinks too much, which gentleman loses money, which lady receives suspicious letters. The wealthy household contains remarkably few true secrets. It contains instead agreements about which secrets will not be spoken aloud. Sometimes boundaries blur. A nurse may spend decades with a family and become emotionally important to the children she raises. A trusted maid may remain with her mistress through marriage, illness, and widowhood. An elderly servant may know several generations. Such bonds can be genuine and profound. Yet affection does not erase hierarchy. The servant can love the child and still be dismissed. The maid can know every private detail of her mistress's life and still eat downstairs. Victorian domestic intimacy lives beside structural inequality. You look around the working spaces. They are simpler than yours, less decorated, less comfortable. Servants' bedrooms may be small and cold, especially in attics. Fire safety is another concern. A maid carrying a candle through dark passages lives with hazards you barely notice. Stairs themselves are dangerous when climbed repeatedly while carrying heavy trays or buckets. The body pays for the house. Hands redden, backs ache, feet swell, skin cracks. Young servants grow tired. Then morning comes and the grate needs cleaning again. You begin climbing back upstairs. The transition is gradual. The air feels quieter. Carpets return. Decoration thickens. The working world recedes behind doors. By the time you reach the main corridor, the house has recovered its illusion. A lamp burns softly. Your bedroom is ready. Fresh water waits. The bed has been turned down. Someone has arranged the fire. You see no labour, only results. That is perhaps the central luxury of your entire Victorian day. Not silk, not jewellery, not the carriage, not imported tea. Your greatest luxury is distance from necessity. You need warmth, but you do not carry coal. You need food, but you do not cook. You need clean clothes, but you do not wash them. You need transport, but you do not groom the horses. You need a functioning home, but dozens of hands absorb the physical consequences. And now, as the servants finish their last duties and the enormous house finally begins to settle. London outside is settling too. The city does not truly sleep. Some people work through the night. Some search for shelter. Some guard warehouses. Some deliver goods before dawn. But your curtains are closing. Your fire is low. Your fortune waits to survive another day. And with the sounds of the household fading around you, there remains only one final question. After all this comfort, labour, restriction, performance and wealth, what does it actually feel like to lie down as one of Victorian London's rich and believe that this extraordinary world is simply normal? You return to the bedroom. First time since morning, almost nobody expects anything from you. The door closes, the social performance softens. Your coat is gone. Jewellery has been placed safely away. The elaborate clothing that announced your position throughout the day is now being brushed, folded, aired or examined by someone else. The fire is burned low. Beyond the curtains, London continues without you. A carriage passes somewhere below. Its wheels approach, rattle beneath the window, then slowly disappear. Farther away comes the faint whistle of a train. Perhaps a dog barks. Perhaps a policeman's footsteps sound along the pavement. The city never becomes completely silent. But your house is very good at pretending it does. You climb into bed. The sheets are cool at first. Then warmth gathers around you. This is where the difference between your life and most Victorian lives becomes almost painfully simple. You are safe. Not perfectly safe, of course. No Victorian is. Fire remains a danger. Disease remains a danger. Financial disaster is possible. A burglary might occur. A child can become ill overnight. A telegram can arrive tomorrow carrying terrible news. But compared with millions around you, your existence contains layers of protection. You do not expect eviction because 1 week's wages disappear. You do not wonder whether breakfast will exist. You do not share a single overcrowded room with an entire family. You do not need to pawn your coat to purchase food. You possess reserves, money in the bank, investments, property, family connections, objects that can be sold, people who will extend credit, A wealthy Victorian can fall, but there is often a long staircase beneath him. For the poor, the drop can be only one step away. Your security is therefore not merely comfort. It changes how the future feels. Tomorrow is something you can plan. You arrange dinners weeks ahead. You order clothing that requires fittings. You purchase theatre tickets. You consider travel. You invest money expecting returns years later. Poverty compresses time. Wealth expands it. Yet your future is not entirely your own. Family expectations surround the bed almost as surely as the curtains. If you are the eldest son of a landed family, inheritance may already shape your identity. Property may descend according to legal arrangements designed to preserve estates. You are not simply inheriting wealth. You are inheriting responsibility for maintaining a name. The house must survive you. The land should pass onward. Debts must be controlled. A suitable marriage may be expected. Children, especially an heir, become part of the family strategy. Your life belongs partly to people who are not yet born. If you are a younger son, the situation differs. You may receive money, education and connections without inheriting the main estate. A profession becomes more important. Army, church, law, diplomatic or imperial service, perhaps business. The family can open doors, but it cannot give every son the same property. Primogeniture concentrates expectations along with wealth. If you're a daughter, inheritance may be even more complicated. Property arrangements vary, but substantial estates often prioritize male succession. Settlements may provide money for daughters, while marriage becomes closely connected to their economic futures. Again, wealth gives you options while simultaneously creating rules. You stare toward the dark ceiling. Perhaps you think of empire. It is difficult not to, although you may not consciously use that word every evening. The British Empire surrounds your life indirectly. The tea you drank, the investments discussed, the objects purchased, relatives serving overseas, news in the morning paper, military campaigns, shipping, trade, maps. In 1875, imperial confidence is deeply woven into elite British culture. Many prosperous Victorians assume British institutions. Commerce and political influence represent progress. Racial and cultural hierarchies are frequently treated as obvious truths. Modern eyes recognize the violence and exploitation hidden inside those assumptions. Colonized people do not experience imperial confidence in the same way as a gentleman reading dispatches beside a London fireplace. Even among Victorians, empire is not discussed with one voice. Missionaries, politicians, merchants, soldiers and reformers disagree over policies and abuses. But few members of your social class can escape benefiting from the larger system entirely. The empire feels distant. Its products feel close. That distance has followed you throughout the day. Labour in distant countries becomes tea. Labour downstairs becomes dinner. Urban poverty becomes scenery outside the carriage. Distance is one of wealth's most useful inventions. It does not remove uncomfortable realities. It places doors between you and them. You turn slightly beneath the blankets. The mattress responds softly. A poor Londoner might be sleeping now in a lodging house where beds are rented by the night. Another family may crowd into a damp room. Some people have no secure bed at all. You possess a bedroom large enough to contain furniture whose only job is making the bedroom more attractive. The inequality is enormous, yet you may not experience yourself as extraordinarily rich. This is one of the strangest things about privilege. People compare themselves with those nearby. Your neighbour's house is larger. Your cousin has better horses. Someone at dinner possesses an older title. Another family has purchased paintings you cannot afford. Perhaps your income feels stretched by servants, estates, entertaining, and debts. You may sincerely complain about expenses. A person can live in luxury while feeling financially pressured because expectations expand alongside income. The wealthy Victorian household is a machine for converting abundance into obligation. A larger house requires more servants. More servants require more money. Greater status requires more entertaining. Entertaining requires more food, wine, clothing and transport. Then everyone must visit everyone else to admire the results. You almost have to respect the efficiency. Still, when serious hardship arrives, the difference becomes clear. If London becomes unbearable, you can leave. This may be your greatest privilege after time. You can travel to the countryside, spend part of the year at an estate, visit the coast, go to Scotland, travel through Europe. If health fails, doctors may recommend a warmer climate. If society becomes tedious, you can temporarily escape society while writing letters explaining how much you miss everyone. The poor cannot simply relocate for fresh air. Their work anchors them. Rent anchors them. Transport costs anchor them. Your money creates movement. It also creates privacy. You can close a door. This seems ordinary until you remember the crowded rooms of poorer London. Privacy allows secrets, reading, rest, arguments that neighbours may not hear. Grief without an audience. Solitude itself becomes a luxury, and yet your privacy is imperfect. Servants are always near. Society watches. Family expectations follow you. Newspapers can expose scandal. Your reputation belongs partly to other people's opinions. You're free from many material constraints while trapped inside elaborate social ones. So was it good to be rich in Victorian London? Compared with being poor, unquestionably. Romanticizing hardship would be absurd. Good food matters. Warmth matters. Medical access matters. Space matters. Security matters. Education matters. Being able to protect your children matters. Money provides all of these advantages, but if you arrived here from the modern world expecting endless aristocratic comfort, you would notice what wealth cannot purchase in 1875. Antibiotics do not exist. Electric domestic life barely exists. Air conditioning is a distant dream. Telephones are only beginning their story. Modern sanitation remains incomplete. Travel is slower. Childbirth is dangerous. Infection can kill. Coal smoke enters your lungs. Your dentist possesses tools you would prefer not to examine closely. And your beautiful carriage is travelling behind a horse, through a street containing the unavoidable evidence that horses have been there. Historical luxury is still historical. Perhaps that is why the room now feels both familiar and strange. You recognise the desire for comfort, the anxiety about status, the pleasure of good food, the temptation to compare yourself with richer people, the need to belong, the fear of illness, the hope that children will prosper. Those feelings cross centuries easily. The objects surrounding them change. Your pocket watch ticks. Time itself has become more standardized during your century, pushed partly by railways and communications. London keeps increasingly precise time, yet tonight the minutes feel slower. Tomorrow, the household machinery will begin again before you wake. A maid will rise in darkness. Ash will be removed. Coal will be carried. Water heated. Clothing prepared. Breakfast arranged. Horses fed. Letters delivered. Newspapers opened. The entire structure will rebuild your comfort from the ground up. You will rise behind heavy curtains and perhaps barely notice, because that is what normal life does. It makes extraordinary systems disappear through repetition. The rich Victorian does not wake every morning astonished by servants and silver. You simply wake at home, and perhaps that is the closest you can come to understanding what wealth truly feels like in this city. Not constant excitement, not endless luxury consciously enjoyed, but the quiet assumption that warmth, food, service, privacy and security will still be there tomorrow. Now the last carriage sound fades beyond the window. The fire settles into a red glow. The mansion grows still around you, and somewhere below, the final servant finishes the final task before morning begins the cycle again. You do not hear it. You're already drifting. The London of 1875 can recede now, slowly and gently, until the gas lamps beyond the curtains become only small blurred points in the fog. The horses move farther away. The wheels soften. The voices disappear. Your great house becomes quiet, room by room, floor by floor. You no longer need to remember the calling cards, the dinners, the investments, the dresses, the clubs, or the endless small rules that held this polished world together. Let them rest downstairs with the silver. Let the carriage stand in its stable. Let the newspapers wait unopened. The fire is warm enough. The bed is soft enough. And for a little while, nothing else is required of you. Outside, London continues breathing beneath its smoky night sky, but you can allow it to move farther into the distance. Your eyes grow heavy. The last glow fades, the century becomes quiet, and you can simply rest here, safe behind the curtains, while history itself slips softly into sleep.